Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Grand Line. Heroic Spirit of the Straw Hat Pirates. Chapter 1. Navy Headquarters, Marshal's Office. At this moment, almost all the high-end combat forces of the Navy are gathered in the office. Marshal Sengoku, Navy Hero Garp, former Navy Admiral Zephyr, current Navy 3 Admirals, etc. Sengoku, who was sitting in the main seat, looked around at the senior Navy officials present and slowly said, "The great pirate Rosie encountered the Germa 66 Corps in the North Sea. The two sides fought, and the result of the battle was that Germa 66 was defeated, its leader Vinsmoke Judge was injured and unconscious, and Judge's daughter Vinsmoke Reiju disappeared." Quote, Suru, who was in charge of capturing Rosie, received the news and found Rosie and Reiju, who was captured by Rosie and was responsible for serving as a temporary navigator, near the sea area where the two sides fought. Quote, However, the cunning Rosie eventually escaped, and defeated Guion when Guion was alone and captured him. Quote, After that, he used Guion as a hostage to threaten Suru, destroyed Suru's warship and escaped. Quote, Because of this incident, I have arranged for the North Sea Navy to conduct a comprehensive search for that man. Quote, However, half a month has passed, and that man seems to have completely disappeared from the North Sea. Quote, Our people have no way to find his trace. Quote, Speaking of this, Sengoku paused slightly. The Navy in the conference room immediately started to discuss. Among them, Garp and Zephyr looked particularly unhappy. They were both Navy officers of the same period as Suru, and they learned that Suru's sister Guion was captured by pirates. The two naturally felt very uncomfortable. The same feeling was felt by Admiral Sengoku, who also had a very deep friendship with Suru. What a terrible guy, even Suru's staff officer couldn't catch him. Marshal Sengoku, where did that man come from, and why did the world government offer a bounty for this man in the first place? And it was a bounty of 500 million berries in one go. Admiral Kizaru crossed his hands and looked at Sengoku in front of him curiously. Hearing this, Sengoku fell silent. After a while, he spoke. I only learned about this from the 5 elders later. This matter is really too shocking, and it is something that cannot be known to the outside world. Quote, Hearing this, everyone including Kizaru immediately sat up straight, curiously waiting for Sengoku's answer. The great pirate Roche was previously an elite agent of CP9 and completed countless dangerous missions. It is the existence of another elite agent Rob Lucci who far surpasses CP9. For this reason, the world government intends to absorb Roche as an agent of CP0. And they did so. However, it was only on the first day of becoming a CP0 agent, when he was responsible for escorting a celestial dragon to sail. The man suddenly jumped up and killed everyone on the warship except the slaves. Even the celestial dragon was no exception. It is precisely because of this that the world government will offer a reward for him. Sengoku said, Did he actually kill a celestial dragon? No wonder Xiaohei had to arrest him. But, is the man's power so strong that he could capture Guion? Quote, Sengoku, is there no news about him now? Garp asked with his arms folded and frowning. In fact, it's not that there is no news. I got a secret message that I dare not confirm. It is said that the man used some method to go to the East China Sea. Garp, the East China Sea is your hometown. This time I asked you to go to the East China Sea. If you really find that man, with your strength, you will definitely be able to catch Rosie and rescue Guion. In addition, since the man's power is strong enough to compete with Germa 66, he can even kidnap Guion. I have also made adjustments to his bounty, Sengoku said as he took out a bounty order. In the center of the bounty order, there is a young man with black hair and a handsome face. And below the bounty order, there is a long string of numbers. 800 million berries. There can't be pirates with such a bounty in the East China Sea. Quote, Although I'm a little curious about why that guy was judged as CP0, it's better to catch this man as soon as possible. Sengoku, I'm leaving for the East China Sea now. If you have any news, just contact me using Den Den Mushi. Garp stood up from his seat and turned to the door of the conference room. At the same time, on the other side, East China Sea, Shields Town. A ship pulled by a giant snail slowly approached the shore, welcoming the curious eyes of the townspeople. At this moment, inside the cabin, Mr. Rosie, we have arrived at the agreed location. Do you need to land now? A mature woman with a light pink dress and a 6 inches sign on her legs came to the man she called Rosie. She was Germa Reju. Thank you for your hard work, Reju. Now that the agreement has been fulfilled, you can leave later. Rosie sheathed the long sword Kinpura that he was playing with, turned back and smiled at Reju. Mr. Rosie is really ruthless. Are you going to let me go after I'm done with it? I spent a lot of effort to bring you from the North Sea to the East Sea, and even escaped the pursuit of the Navy. I believe you also understand that because of the woman behind you, the Navy is very strict in pursuing you. Reju walked up to Rosie, took Rosie's hand in her arms, and her eyes fell on the unconscious woman on the bed behind Rosie. Slender legs, long black hair, and the Navy's standard cloak, it was the Navy Admiral candidate Momotosagi Gion. I have no choice. If I don't take this woman as a hostage, I can't escape from those crazy women led by Crane. Rosie shrugged and said helplessly. On Suru's warship, in addition to herself and Gion, 2 powerful warriors, the other girl's army should not be underestimated. Although Rosie was able to defeat Gion, it was also by surprise. If he directly confronted Suru and others, Rosie didn't think he had the possibility of escaping. Thinking of the blood of the celestial dragons on his hands, Rosie could imagine what would happen to him if he fell into the hands of the Navy. As for you, Ms. Reju, I also hope that you can always stay by my side. After all, your navigation skills are indeed what I need. But you have the gene that must obey judge's orders, so I naturally can't keep you. If one day I find a solution to your physical problem, and you still want to sail with me, I will be very welcome. Rosie said, if I can get rid of my father's control, maybe I can really sail with you, Mr. Rosie. Reju sighed, and the smile on her face looked very sincere at this moment. Okay, don't worry about it, Reju. Take this troublesome Ms. Gion away from this island. This is my last request to you. If I return her to the Navy, they won't bite me like a mad dog. Rosie pulled his hand out of Reju's arms, holding the famous sword Kinpura he got from Gion, and was about to leave. Wait, Rosie, before leaving, can I ask you why you want to kill the celestial dragons? According to what you said, you should be doing well in the world government. Reju asked curiously. Well, maybe I've seen too much darkness, and I'm a little yearning for a bright world. Rosie waved his hand and walked out of the cabin without looking back. Only Reju and Gion, who was injected with a strong anesthetic, were left. Yearning for light. Did this man see something unbearable on the celestial dragon's ship? Reju frowned slightly, thinking of the days she spent with Rosie and the nature of the celestial dragons. She felt that Rosie might really be unable to tolerate some of the celestial dragon's atrocities. Forget it, these are not things I should think about. Let's take this woman to a naval base farther away from here. Then let's go back to Germa 66. Reju shook her head and turned to look at Gion. When her eyes fell on the word Jung, scrawled on Gion's slender thighs, the corners of her mouth couldn't help but curl up. I wonder what kind of expression this Lieutenant General Gion will have when he learns of Luo Chi's joke. Wow, so awesome, such a big snail. Kebi, look, this snail is so powerful. On the coast of Shields Town, Luffy, wearing a straw hat, stared at the giant snail on the coast with wide eyes. Yeah, it's really amazing. I didn't expect that a snail could stop pulling the boat. The pink-haired boy with glasses, Kirby, pushed his eyes that almost fell off. Like Luffy, he was also quite surprised. Kirby, look, there's a man coming out of the boat. He must be the owner of this ship. I decided that I would invite him to be my partner. Luffy cheered and rushed towards Rosie, who had just jumped off Reju's ship before Kirby could say anything. I am Luffy, the man who will become the Pirate King. Please be my partner. Huh, Rossi blinked and looked at the straw hat boy in front of him with some surprise. Straw Hat Luffy really happened to me. Single quote. That little guy over there is Kirby. Single quote. In other words, the plot has just begun now. Single quote. Rossi raised his eyebrows and shook his head at Luffy while thinking in his mind. If it had been when he first came to the pirate world, Rossi might have been willing to join the Straw Hat Pirates for a mainline adventure. But now he has traveled through the pirate world for more than 10 years, and has mastered the 6 naval styles and 3-color hockey. In terms of hard power, he can even compete with the Navy Admiral candidates. Under such circumstances, he could not think of a reason to join the Straw Hat Pirates again. Sorry, I don't. Bite. You have been invited by the Son of Destiny in the current world. Do you agree? After agreeing, you will awaken the strongest heroic spirit template system, and use the heroic spirit template to strengthen yourself and your partners. Luo Qi, I've already beaten the Admiral candidate, and you just woke up to the system. Isn't it too late? Luo Qi complained in his mind and was thinking quickly in his mind. Heroic spirit templates, I see, you can extract the templates of characters from the heavens and worlds to strengthen yourself. Single quote. Are the heroic spirits of Xingyu, the ninjas of Naruto, and even the fighters of Dragon Ball included in the heroic spirit template? Single quote. Interesting, if this is the case, then the Straw Hats will have to join. Single quote. Luo Qi nodded secretly, stretched out his hand and held Luffy's hand. Luffy, right, I'm Rozzy, nice to meet you. I agree to your invitation. Bite. Congratulations to the host, you have successfully launched the strongest heroic spirit template system. Partner testing in progress. You now have your partner Monkey D. Luffy, and filter out his personal attributes of Captain, Foodie, and Rubber. Start selecting heroic spirit templates based on Monkey D. Luffy's personal attributes. Captain Francis Drake, Foodie, Uru, Rubber, Reed Richards. Please ask the host to let Monkey D. Luffy choose among the above 3 heroic spirit templates. The host can randomly obtain the power of one of the remaining 2 heroic spirit templates. Note, the host will also gain the power of the heroic spirit template selected by the partner. Interesting, is this the specific function of the system? Single quote. Let Luffy choose one of 3. Single quote. Francis Drake, this is the legendary pirate who conquered the sea in the Moon World. Single quote. There's also Uru in The Prisoner of Good Food, and Mr. Fantastic Reed Richards in Marvel. Single quote. These 3 do correspond to Luffy's 3 attributes. Single quote. While Luo Qi was thinking in his mind, Kebi, who had been persuading Luffy just now, suddenly widened his eyes. What? Did you agree? Hehe, great, I have a partner. The corners of Luffy's mouth cracked, just when he was about to laugh. But he saw the Germa 66 ship gradually getting further away. Hey, wait, Luo Qi, why did your ship leave? You said that the boat pulled by the snail is my friend's boat, not mine. What? That's not your ship. What, is it just that it's not my ship, so you don't want me as a partner? No, I can feel that you are a very powerful guy, although that ship is a bit of a pity. Luffy turned his head and looked at the sailing Germa 66 ship, with an indescribable disappointment on his face. Don't worry, Captain Lu. Although I'm not the owner of that snail ship. But I have other fun things. Luo Qi smiled and was about to show Luffy the system's capabilities when Luffy suddenly heard a loud, gurgling sound from his stomach. Ah, I'm hungry. Luffy held his stomach and his body instantly softened. There is no other way. Since the captain is hungry, let's go eat first. Okay, it's time to eat. Kebi, you can come too. Luffy smiled happily and looked at Kirby beside him. Mr. Luffy, we don't have any berry on us. Kobe shook his head in panic. He didn't want to eat a free meal or something like that. As for berry, I have it. Rock's mouth corners raised, and he opened the box in his hand, revealing the neatly stacked large denomination berry bills inside. So many berry. Luffy and Kobe widened their eyes. At this moment, they were extremely shocked. Not much, it's about 100 million berry at most. Roche rubbed his nose, and his eyes shifted to a girl with short orange hair in the distance. His observation Haki keenly sensed the look of the orange-haired girl when he opened the box to reveal the berry inside. Orange hair, about 18 years old, this girl can't be Nami. Single quote. Thinking of this, Rock's smile became even bigger. 100 million berry. Mr. Roche, how do you have so many berry? Kobe said in surprise. Well, I stole this from a disgusting man before. Rozzy closed the box. In order not to scare Kobe, he did not say that he stole these berries from the celestial dragons. In fact, if it was not inconvenient to carry, he could have snatched more berries at that time. Anyway, we have berries for eating. After eating, we will go to find the three-sword swordsman and make him our new partner. Rozzy, Thank you this time. I will return the berries to you in the future. Luffy stretched out his hand and patted Rosie's 1.9-meter tall shoulder, laughing. Since we are already partners, don't mind it too much, Luffy. Let's go, let's eat meat. Rosie nodded to Luffy and took the lead to walk towards the town restaurant. Luffy, who heard about eating meat, naturally followed with joy. At the same time, when Rosie and others took steps, the woman who looked like Nami blinked and followed with small steps. Shields Town, restaurant. With enough berries, Rosie naturally chose to eat in the private room. The food that filled the entire kitchen table immediately whetted Luffy's appetite. In a few minutes, most of the food went into Luffy's stomach. In desperation, Rosie had to order more food from the restaurant waiter. For a while, waiters kept coming into the private room with hot dishes. I see, you were once captured by a fat pirate, and then rescued by Luffy. You've worked so hard, Kobe. But since your dream is to become a marine, is it okay for you to follow us all the time? We're going to the marine base to rescue the three swordsmen later. We might even have some conflicts with the marines. If the marines mistakenly think you're in the same group as us, you'll never be a marine again. Rosie put down the wine glass in his hand and said to Kobe, who was sitting next to him. Hearing this, Kobe was stunned on the spot. Luffy, who was eating continuously, also paused for a moment. After a little thought, Luffy looked at Kobe and said, Kobe, let's go our separate ways here. Rosie is right, you have your marine dream. It's not a good thing to continue to hang out with us. Although Luffy seems simple, he is quite perceptive in some things. After Rosie's reminder, the original parting words were naturally brought forward. But, no buts, Kobe. Rosie waved his hand, his expression suddenly became serious. He took out a wanted poster from his pocket and placed it on the dining table. Kobe, I'm not an ordinary person. Instead, he is a pirate who has been rewarded by the Navy and the world government. Luffy is fine, he is not famous yet. But if you stay with me for one more minute, the possibility of you realizing your dream will be much less, do you understand? Kobe stared at the wanted poster on the table in a daze. After a few seconds, his eyes widened to the maximum, and his eyeballs almost popped out. Hey, 800 million berries, Mr. Rosie, you are actually rewarded with 800 million berries. What did you do before? Hearing Kobe's exclamation, Luffy almost spit out all the food in his mouth. 800 million berries. Rosie, you are so powerful. Luffy looked at Rosie with his mouth wide open. Although he keenly felt that Rosie was not simple, he never thought that the man he invited would be a wanted criminal with a reward of hundreds of millions. It's not that powerful, it's just that I slaughtered a more noble pig, so I got so much reward. Rosie smiled and said casually. Thinking of the crying appearance of the celestial dragon before being killed, Rosie couldn't help laughing in his heart. Even the most noble people can be so unbearable when facing death. Rosie, you are so awesome. It seems that I have to work hard too. As a captain, I can't lose to the crew. Luffy pressed the straw hat on his head, his face full of confidence. Then, he asked Kobe to leave the private room. Now that he knew that Rosie was a pirate with a bounty of 800 million, Luffy was even more reluctant to let Kobe stay here. Thank you, Mr. Luffy, I hope your dream can come true. Kobe bowed to Luffy, opened the door of the private room and walked out. At the same time, a beautiful girl in a white t-shirt and a blue skirt walked in from the door with a large plate of food. Hello, both of you, this is your new dish. The woman, Nami, walked to Rosie with a youthful and beautiful smile and slowly put the food on the plate on the table. Roche raised his eyebrows. With his observation haki, he could naturally sense that while Nami was cooking towards the table, her other empty hand was reaching for the box of berry that she had placed on a chair. How interesting. Single quote. Roche raised his lips, and reached out to wrap his arm around Nami's waist and pulled her towards him. Caught off guard, Nami sat directly on the box of berry. Customer, what are you doing? We don't have this kind of service in our store. Nami pursed her lips and looked at Roche shyly. At this moment, feeling the 100 million berry under her buttocks, Nami's heartbeat began to accelerate uncontrollably. Roche, do you know her? Luffy looked at Nami and asked while stuffing food into his mouth. Soon, the food that Nami had just brought was eaten by him, and the stomach that had just recovered a little swelled up again in an instant, causing Nami to be stunned. "We know each other, I guess," Rosie said to Luffy, and turned to look at Nami beside him. "My friend ate a devil fruit, so he looks like that. You don't have to be afraid." He, that's right, I'm a rubber man who ate a rubber fruit. My body can be like this, it can be like that. As if to prove Rosie's words, Luffy took the initiative to pull his cheeks and pose in various postures that ordinary people could not pose. Devil fruit. That legendary thing of at least 100 million berries actually exists. Nami exclaimed. Devil fruits do exist, and there are even devil fruits I collected in the box under your butt. How about it? Are you interested in secretly watching? Rosie smiled. Devil fruit. Really? Wait a minute. Nami's mouth twitched slightly, and she smiled far-fetchedly, and at the same time she was a little confused about why Rosie just said that. Rosie, is she a thief? Luffy frowned. How could that be? I'm just an ordinary waiter. I think you must have misunderstood. Quote. Nami looked at Luffy with a very aggrieved smile. But soon, the smile on her face turned into an extremely terrified smile. It was all because she caught a glimpse of the bounty on the table next to Luffy. 800 million berries. This man actually offered a bounty of 800 million berries. Nami looked at Rosie in horror. At this moment, Rosie's extremely gentle smile turned into a devilish smile in Nami's eyes. Nami could never have thought that the target she chose this time was actually a pirate with a bounty of 800 million. Thinking that Arlong, who ruled the Kokoja village, was offered a bounty of 20 million berries, Nami's forehead was already covered with cold sweat. Really, Rosie, is there really a devil fruit in your box? Luffy tilted his head and looked curiously at the box where Nami was sitting. That's right. Rosie nodded, held Nami's waist with his hands, took the box out from under her hips, and opened the box in front of Nami and Luffy. The white berry bills in the box immediately made Nami's eyes radiate golden light, and even suppressed the fear in her heart for a while because of knowing Rosie's bounty. This box has a compartment, which contains the devil fruits I once stole from the world government's ship. One is the parahuman bubble fruit, and the other is the animal bull fruit, giraffe form. Speaking of which, I haven't told you yet, Luffy. In fact, I used to be in the world government, but later I chose to leave because I couldn't stand the celestial dragons. I got these two fruits by chance when I left, Rosie said as he opened the compartment of the box. Luffy propped himself up and looked over, and sure enough, he saw two strange-shaped fruits. Amazing, it's really similar to the rubber fruit I ate before. Rosie, you have two devil fruits here, so are you a devil fruit ability user? Luffy asked. No, I'm not. These two fruits are too ordinary, and I don't want to lose the fun of swimming because of them. Rosie shook his head, looked at Nami who was getting more and more excited because of the two devil fruits, and said jokingly. Speaking of which, I got some interesting information when I was working at the world government. There is an island in the East China Sea, and there is a group of fishmen who form the dragon pirates and rule there. And there is a human girl in this fishman pirate group. She seems to have reached some kind of agreement with the dragon pirates and has been stealing outside all year round. Do you think I'm right, Ms. Nami? Hearing this, Nami immediately retreated to the side in horror. Even berry in the box couldn't attract her attention for a while. What Rosie said was reasonable and even called her name. This made Nami not even know how to defend herself for a while. However, what she didn't know was that although Rosie had worked in the world government, the so-called things about the dragon pirates were all because Rosie had read the original work of One Piece, so he knew about it. Don't worry, Miss Nami. Although I have been offered a bounty of 800 million berries, it doesn't mean that I am a bad person. I don't intend to do anything to you, on the contrary, I can help you. Rosie waved to Nami and asked her to sit next to him. Nami frowned slightly. Although she was a little worried, she thought of Rosie's exaggerated bounty and Luffy with strange abilities next to her. She still sat next to Rosie honestly. Ms. Nami, I know you are a very good navigator. I guess you will stay in the Dragon Pirates because they are impressed by your navigational talent. As for why you are running around outside and committing thefts, they must have offered a price for you to redeem your hometown with Berry, right? Roche smiled and ignored Nami's surprised expression and continued. Don't be too surprised. I have obtained a lot of intelligence because of my previous work. Combining this intelligence with the things I said I saw, it is easy to guess the situation on your side. I can tell you very clearly that even if you get enough berry to find the dragon pirates, you will not be able to achieve your goal. Since they will keep you because of your talent, they will never let you leave. In addition, I also learned that the dragon pirates have connections with Colonel Mouse of the East China Sea. Pirates and the Navy have joined forces. Do you think you can escape the clutches of the dragon pirates? At this point, Roche slapped Luffy's hand that was reaching for the devil fruit and closed the box. Without the devil fruit, Luffy continued to focus on the food. However, he looked at Nami from time to time, and it was obvious that he had some thoughts in his mind. What do you want to tell me by saying this? What is the so-called cooperation? At this moment, Nami leaned back in the chair like a deflated balloon. Rosie was able to tell the story of the dragon pirates in such detail, which was enough to show that he had a deep understanding of the dragon pirates. Hiding the identity at this time might have a counterproductive effect. She thought it would be better to honestly admit her identity and figure out what Rosie wanted to do. It's very simple. We will help you solve the problem of the dragon pirates. And you, join the pirate group of Luffy and me and become our navigator. Rosie raised his index finger and said with a smile. Since he met Nami, Roche didn't plan to let Nami join and leave first, and then join the Straw Hat Pirates like in the original. Rather than being as troublesome as in the original, it is better to put enough conditions directly to let Nami join. In this way, Roche can also let Nami get a certain heroic spirit template faster, so that she can get familiar with the power of the heroic spirit template earlier. That's right, Nami, join us. Luffy said to Nami in a slurred voice while eating big bones and meat. Obviously, he is also quite clear about the importance of navigators. Join you as a pirate. Impossible, I hate pirates the most. Nami subconsciously shook her head and refused. But realizing Rock's exaggerated bounty, her face softened immediately. I mean, your bounty is so high, even without me, I can still sail freely on the sea. Nami said, although I know some navigation skills, I don't know much. Professional things should be left to professional navigators. How about this, I hire you with berries. Every time you take us safely to an island, I will pay you 1 million berries. Although 1 million berries is not much, it is at least safe, isn't it? As he said, Roche took out 1 million berries from his suitcase and put it in front of Nami. Seeing this, Nami's eyes changed to the same as berries again. After a little thought, she nodded. Okay, since you've said this, I'll join you temporarily. Nami's mouth corners raised, and her eyes glanced at Rock's suitcase. If I don't join, I don't know what this man with a bounty of 800 million will do. Single quote. I'll join you first, but don't blame me for taking your suitcase away later. Single quote. Luffy cheered as Nami finished speaking. Great, Roche, we have a navigator now. After we find that 3 swordsmen, we will have 4 people in total. Roche smiled and nodded. Although Nami's gaze towards the suitcase was hidden, Roche still noticed it. However, he was not worried about it. After they got familiar with each other, he didn't think Nami would leave the Straw Hat Pirates. Luffy, the meal is almost over. Nami is also our partner. I think I can almost reveal one of my special abilities to you. Roche said, raising his hand and snapping his fingers. The next moment, a pure darkness spread out from Roche, instantly enveloping Roche, Luffy and Nami in the private room. In the blink of an eye, the 3 of them came to a place where there was only darkness around them, and only the circular platform with a diameter of 10 meters where the 3 of them were still bright. Where is this? Nami looked around in panic, her tone seemed very scared. It's so dark that I can't see anything. Rosie, is this your special ability? But didn't you say before that you are not a devil fruit ability user? Luffy tilted his head and looked at Rosie in confusion. Rosie smiled and waved in front of Luffy. The next moment, a panel that all 3 of them could see appeared in front of Rosie. The panel had 3 words written on it, Captain, Foodie, and Rubber. And below these 3 words, the names of 3 people, Francis Drake, Alu, and Reed Richards, were written respectively. Rosie, what is this? Luffy asked. Captain, Foodie, Rubber, these correspond to your 3 attributes, Luffy. Francis Drake is a pirate with the same captain attribute as you, and he is a great captain who once conquered a certain sea area. In addition, Alu is a foodie, and Reed Richards, known as Mr. Fantastic, has the ability to turn his body into rubber. They all correspond to different attributes of you. Luffy, you can choose one of these 3 people. After choosing, you will gain certain abilities of the person you choose. Rosie's mouth corners raised. This is my special ability. Hearing Rosie's words, Luffy was extremely surprised, and Nami looked at Rosie's face suspiciously, wanting to see if Rosie was lying. Rosie also saw Nami's disbelief. He smiled softly, raised his hand and pointed at the name of Francis Drake. The next moment, the originally dark space suddenly trembled. In just a blink of an eye, Rosie and the other 2 in the platform under their feet came to the top of the boundless ocean. We are on the sea. Nami looked around and asked Rosie in confusion. Hey, look, there is a person standing on the ice over there. Luffy's voice caught Nami's attention. She looked in the direction of Luffy's finger, and sure enough, she saw a mature woman in red clothes, with long crimson hair and a scar on her face on the sea not far away. That one is Francis Drake, known as the woman who shot down the sun. Now, please appreciate her power. As Rosie's voice fell, skeleton soldiers suddenly emerged from under the ice, and the originally silent Drake immediately moved. She pulled out the double guns on her waist, and her body turned into a shadow and flexibly performed her gunfighting skills. The skeleton soldiers hit by the bullets from the double guns immediately collapsed and scattered. Even the skeleton soldiers close to Drake were easily destroyed by Drake's physical skills. In the blink of an eye, half of the hundreds of skeleton soldiers that emerged from the bottom of the ice were gone. Seeing that half of the skeleton soldiers were still left, Drake smiled slightly and raised his right hand flintlock to point straight ahead. At the same time, 8 golden halos suddenly appeared on her left and right sides, and 3 larger halos appeared above her head. In the eyes of Luffy and Nami, a turret protruded from every halo of light. As Drake pulled the trigger of the flintlock cannon fire, the 11 forts fired shells in unison. The remaining skeleton soldiers were instantly overwhelmed by the roaring shells. That's awesome. Rosie, let's invite her to be our partner too. Luffy's eyes lit up and he put his hand on Rosie's shoulder excitedly. Unfortunately, Luffy, the Francis Drake you see in front of you is just a reflection of her. So there's no way we can ask her to be a partner. Compared with this, you'd better take a closer look at the power she shows. Then compare with the other 2 and choose the power you want in the end. Rosie put his hand on Luffy's shoulder to prevent him from rushing towards the projection of the non-acting Francis Drake. As he spoke, the skeleton soldiers bombarded by Francis Drake had completely fallen apart, and none of them could still remain standing. Just when Luffy and Nami thought the demonstration was over, 10 huge naval warships suddenly appeared on the sea a few hundred meters away from Francis Drake. The moment the naval warship appeared, it launched a bombardment on Francis Drake. The dense group of shells immediately caused Nami's expression to change, and she quickly hid behind Luo Chi. Asshole, is this really a projection? How could those shells be so real? Single quote. Can that woman called Francis Drake really handle so many shells? Single quote. Nami pursed her lips and looked at Francis Drake. I saw the corners of Francis Drake's mouth raised, and the aura on his body suddenly became extremely strong. You guys are here. Drake raised both guns in his hands, and with her sharp shout, the ice beneath her feet suddenly shattered. An extremely gorgeous warship with a total length of nearly 37 meters rose from under the ice, while Drake himself stood calmly on the bow of the warship. Boom, boom. As soon as the battleship appeared, it immediately launched a bombardment on the artillery shell group in front. But unlike the ordinary cannons fired by the warships ahead, the warships at Drake's feet actually fired golden lasers. The shells hit by the laser instantly melted in the air. How cool. It's a laser. Raza, is this her boat? Can we ever have a ship like that? Luffy's eyes lit up and he asked Rosie excitedly. Luo Chi smiled and did not reply, because he knew that there would be a scene that would surprise Luffy even more. After the gorgeous battleship at Drake's feet fired a laser, 20 smaller warships emerged from the bottom of the sea around the battleship. The Storm King, the undead horde, the wild hunt is about to begin. With a confident smile on his face, Drake raised his hand and pointed at the 10 warships on the opposite side and pulled the trigger of the flintlock gun in his hand. The next moment, the warships under her feet and the surrounding warships began to bombard her. Suddenly, a series of lasers rushed towards the warship. Under huge firepower suppression, accompanied by a huge roar, 10 naval warships finally sank to the bottom of the sea. Luffy's eyes widened to their maximum size, and at this moment, he was even too excited to speak. Although Nami performed better than Luffy, her trembling body still revealed her state of mind. The noble phantasm, Golden Deer and Stormy Night, as Francis Drake's greatest weapon and her strongest power. Luffy, if you choose to inherit Francis Drake's heroic spirit template, you will be able to possess her power. Rossi patted Luffy on the shoulder and asked with a smile. Awesome, Rossi, did I inherit Francis Drake's template, so I can summon those warships like her? After hearing Luffy's words, Rossi shrugged and said, well, inheriting the heroic spirit template is just the seed of inherited power. The extent to which you can use this power depends on you. The stronger you are, the more powerful you will be when you use the power of the heroic spirit. The noble phantasm, Golden Deer and Stormy Night, we just saw as Drake's strongest power. It is not easy to show this power. In addition, there is a degree of compatibility between a person and the heroic spirit template. The closer it is to the heroic spirit template, the easier it is to unleash the power of the heroic spirit. So Luffy, I suggest you read the next 2 heroic spirit templates before deciding whose power to inherit. As they spoke, the platform under the feet of Luochi and the others shook. In just an instant, the 3 of them returned to the dark space again. He, that's really interesting. Luochi, you are so amazing, you actually have such powerful abilities. And Francis Drake, I don't know where she is the captain, but she is really cool. I wonder if the other 2 are as cool as her. Luffy stroked his hat and his eyes fell on the other 2 names on the panel in front of Luochi. Rubber Reed Richards, just show me what he's like. Luffy waved his hand and slapped the name of the rubber attribute Reed Richards. Soon, there was a familiar shaking. The 3 of them, Luochi, arrived at a research institute that appeared to be extremely advanced. In the center of the research institute, a man was stretching his rubber-like arms to do calculations with various materials and data. Are you really as rubber as me? Rossi, did he also eat the rubber fruit? Luffy pointed at Reed Richards and looked at Rossi curiously. He did not eat our fruit. His rubber ability comes from elsewhere. Rossi glanced at Reed Richards, who was sitting and studying, with a faint light in his eyes. Mr. Fantastic Reed Richards, the scary thing about this man is not his rubber abilities. Single quote. If I inherit this guy's power, I wonder if he will also inherit his terrible scientific knowledge. Single quote. Mr. Fantastic Reed Richards is known as the smartest man in Marvel. Rossi had no doubt that as long as he could inherit Reed Richards' smart head, no one in the pirate world would be able to threaten him. When the time comes, he may be able to conquer the pirate world by inventing some random weapons. Just as Luochi was thinking, the venue changed again, and the 3 of them returned to the dark space. Al, is this the end? Luffy blinked and looked around with unfinished thoughts. Just now, he was only attracted by Reed Richards' rubber ability for a moment. At other times, his eyes fell on the various advanced facilities in the research room. Reed Richards' rubber abilities don't have much value to show, so the time to show them will be short. Compared to this, Uru is the last remaining foodie. Keep watching, Luffy. Rossi said with a smile. Like Luffy, he was also a little disappointed. The demonstration did not demonstrate Reed Richards' inventions, which most likely means that even if one inherits Reed Richards' heroic spirit template, he may not inherit his scientific knowledge, but only the ability of the rubber. All right. Luffy nodded slightly, stretched out his hand and patted the name of the only remaining foodie, Uru. The venue changed, and Luochi and the others had arrived at an extremely luxurious restaurant. In the center of the restaurant is a round table with a diameter of more than 5 meters, filled with exquisite food. But with so much food, only a man with blue hair and nearly 2 meters tall ate it. But in the blink of an eye, he had stuffed enough food for 10 people into his mouth. It's meat, Luffy yelled and was about to rush towards the dining table. Hey, Luffy, did you forget what I said? Those are all projections, not real. Rossi grabbed Luffy's back collar and said quickly. However, after seeing the meat, Luffy could no longer listen to Luochi's words and kept struggling in Luochi's hands. In desperation, Luochi had no choice but to let Luffy go and let him pounce on the dining table, and finally missed it. It's so strange, those things are obviously so real. And I can still smell the fragrance. Why does Luffy's body go right through that food? Nami shrugged her nose and muttered strangely. Although she didn't want to be as exaggerated as Luffy, the smell of the food opposite also aroused Nami's taste buds. A true phantom not only deceives the sense of sight, but also the sense of smell. Razi explained. I see, it's really a strange power. Nami took a deep look at Luochi. Even if he hasn't seen Rossi take action in a real sense, it's not clear whether Luffy can inherit the heroic spirit template. But Nami still realized Rossi's power at this moment. Just the means of creating an illusion is not something ordinary people can do. Are you a foodie? That guy actually ate all the food on the table. The belly has become so round. What kind of body is his body made of? Is it also made of rubber? Luochi, he should be Uru. Nami turned back to look at Uru and asked. That's right, how about it, he is indeed a foodie. Luochi chuckled, raised his hand and snapped his fingers. The scene changed, and Luochi and the three of them, together with Alu, came to a wilderness. In front of Alu, there is this mammoth that is more than 10 meters tall and looks like a hill. Such a big colossus. What kind of monster is this? Nami grabbed Rosie's arm in horror. Even though she already knew that this place was just an illusion, the vivid image of the mammoth still shocked Nami. It's really big. Its meat must be delicious. Luffy drooled and opened his mouth wide. The mammoth in front of King Uru. Stop dreaming, Luffy, you can't eat that mammoth. You must have learned your lesson just now. What I just showed was Alu's foodie attributes. Now I'm showing Alu's power in a real sense. Watch carefully. Razi held Luffy's shoulder, and he was not going to let go this time. As soon as he finished speaking, the mammoth roared. Then he swung his huge trunk and hit Alu's head. Bang! Alu raised his arm and punched, and the fist, which was much bigger than the elephant's trunk, actually blasted the trunk away. Even the mammoth's body couldn't help but take a step back. What a strong power! This is even stronger than the power of the fishman. Nami said with eyes wide open in surprise. He hasn't really shown his power yet, just watch carefully. Razi said. As his voice fell, Alu let out a roar like a demon. No, it was the roar of a real demon. Behind him, a huge red devil appeared out of thin air, and the scarlet figure even scared the mammoth and made it take a step back. The gourmet cell demon, this is a monster that resides in Alu's body. Similarly, this monster can also provide Alu with strength. As long as he eats good enough food, Alu will become stronger. As soon as Luochi finished speaking, Alu suddenly stabbed the mammoth with his left hand in a claw shape. Fork. In an instant, a huge silver-white fork flew out of Alu's hand and directly pierced the mammoth's body. This is not over yet. After the flying fork, Alu's right hand chopped the mammoth horizontally. Knife. The powerful energy turned into a huge knife that chopped the mammoth's body. The heavy blow of the fork and the knife instantly made the mammoth's body fly into the air. Without waiting for the mammoth to land, Alu jumped up and punched the mammoth's abdomen with a powerful punch. 10 consecutive nail punches. Bang, bang, bang. The mammoth's body was blasted into the air by Alu's fist, even though it had already escaped from Alu's fist. Its body continued to emit the roar of being hit by fists, and continued to be impacted by the force of fists. Soon, its body flew to a height of more than 20 meters. Fork, knife, and nail fist are all Alu's iconic skills. The fork and knife he used with his body are harder than steel. And the nail fist he used can hit multiple fists in an instant, and the continuous blows will cause destructive force that pierces deep like nails. Depending on the different ways of use, fork, knife, and nail fist have different manifestations. So, how do you choose, Luffy? As soon as the voice fell, Alu and the mammoth turned into golden light and disappeared. In front of Luffy, the names of the 3 heroes appeared again. That Reed Richards' ability is the same as Luffy's, rubber. And he doesn't seem to be a warrior. If you can really inherit the ability, you still have to choose between Captain Drake and Foodie, Alu. Drake has a powerful firepower fleet, and Alu has unique combat skills. Both parties are quite powerful people. But considering that you will be sailing on the sea in the future, you should choose Drake, who has the ability to summon ships. Nami held her chin with one hand, and her eyes finally stopped at the name. Razi smiled and didn't say anything. As the host of the system, he could only show Luffy the abilities of the 3 heroic spirit templates. For the final choice, he couldn't help Luffy make a choice. I've decided, I'm going to choose Alu as my template. Luffy took a deep breath, raised his hand and slapped Alu's name heavily. The next moment, Alu's name turned into a red light and entered Luffy's body, leaving a mysterious badge on his heart skin. Ding! Monkey D. Luffy made a choice and obtained the template of the foodie, Alu, and learned Alu's initial skills. Through training and becoming stronger, he can learn more skills of the heroic spirit template. Note: consuming devil fruit for your partner can speed up the process of understanding the heroic spirit template skills, and even the secret skills. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the foodie, Uru template and the Captain Francis Drake template, and understanding all the skills of the heroic spirit template. Note: although the host can understand all the skills of the heroic spirit template, whether the skills can be used is linked to the host's own strength. Interestingly, Luffy didn't choose Drake's power, but I gained Drake's power. Single quote. But even though I have mastered all the skills of Drake and Uru, is my ability to use the melon skill still tied to my power? Single quote. It's such a pity. If we could get all the power of Uru, it wouldn't be a problem to defeat the world. Single quote. Although Razi felt a little regretful, after feeling his own abilities and discovering that Drake could use all of his power, he was still quite relieved. On the other side, Luffy frowned slightly, he was also feeling the power in his body. Just when he wanted to try to use this power, the space around him trembled. In the blink of an eye, Luochi, Luffy and Nami returned to their original restaurant private room. We are back. Nami blinked and turned to look around. Luffy has made his choice, so it's natural for us to come back. If Nami, you also want to gain the power of a heroic spirit, I can also take you into the heroic spirit space just now. Luochi smiled. I won't use it now, haha. Nami smiled awkwardly, waved her hands and said. Although under the dual threat of power and money, Nami temporarily became the navigator of the Straw Hats. But her distrust of Luochi made her afraid to accept Luochi's power. Really, that's a shame. But if you change your mind, you can come to me. Rossi shrugged and said nonchalantly. Although Nami is unwilling to accept the power of heroic spirits now, Rossi believes that she will change her mind after she fully experiences Luffy and even other friends using the power of heroic spirits. Hey, Nami, do you really not accept Rossi's ability? It's obviously very interesting. Luffy tilted his head and looked at Nami with a strange look. I have my reasons, but you, why don't you choose Captain Drake's power? Her power is obviously quite useful for navigation. Drake's power is really cool, but I always feel that if I get Uru's power, I can use it better. Besides, as long as you eat enough, you can get more power. Isn't this right? Isn't it cool? I think you chose Uru for this reason. Nami shook her head and sighed. Speaking of which, have you really mastered Uru's power, Luffy? Nami asked curiously. He, of course, if you don't believe it, just look at it. Luffy shouted softly, and the space around his body suddenly trembled. In Nami's unbelievable eyes, a red demon appeared behind Luffy. It's actually true. Nami opened her mouth. He, is this my red ghost? It's so cool. Luffy looked behind him and shouted excitedly. At this moment, the private room door was pushed open and the real waiter walked in. Guest, what else do you need? Ghost. The waiter opened his mouth wide and fell to the ground with his eyes wide open. The restaurant waiter fell to the ground, and Luochi and the other 3 could not stay in the restaurant. After paying the bill, Rossi and Luffy took the reluctant Nami to the naval base stationed in the town. Razi, is that guy the pirate hunter? Luffy asked as he looked at the man tied to the pillar in front of him. Yes, he is Zoro, the famous pirate hunter in the East China Sea. Rossi nodded. By the way, do you really want to invite him to be your partner? Although the restaurant owner's woman said just now that he was tied up voluntarily because he wanted to protect her, he is a pirate hunter, right? Isn't that your mortal enemy? Aren't you worried that he will arrest you? Nami asked confused. Nami, you are our partner now. If he is our mortal enemy, he is also your mortal enemy. Besides, do you think he has the ability to arrest me? Rossi put his hand on Nami's shoulder and asked with interest. TCH, I'm just joining you for the time being. However, if it's you, you really don't have to be afraid of him. Thinking of Roki's exaggerated abilities, Nami shook her head and said. The sound of the discussion between Rossi and the three reached Soren's ears, causing him to slowly open his eyes and look in the direction from which the sound came. Hey, what are you three chattering about? Why are you here? Aren't you afraid of death? Zoro said as he glanced at Rossi, Luffy, and Nami. When he saw Luo Chi's face, his pupils narrowed suddenly, as if he had seen something terrible. Big Pirate Rossi, why are you here? Are you here to destroy this naval base? Hey, do you know me? I am indeed a pirate hunter. It seems that you have seen my reward order. You know, Luo Chi was famous in the Grand Line, and then went to the North Sea. His bounty orders are more popular in the Grand Line and the North Sea, but there are not many bounty orders about him in the East China Sea. This is also the reason why Nami didn't recognize Rossi at first. We are not here to destroy the naval base, but to invite you to become our partner. At this time, Luffy, the captain, stood up. What, as pirates, you actually invited me, a pirate hunter, as your partner? Is there anything wrong with your head? He, because you are very powerful and you also protected the restaurant owner's daughter, I want to invite you. TCH, I'm not doing it for that girl. Besides, I will never become a pirate under any circumstances. Having said this, Sauron looked at Rossi firmly. Don't say that. There are many disadvantages to becoming a pirate. But you can at least survive, right? Speaking of which, I'm curious, why would a man like you be so naive as to think that the son of a naval commander would keep his promise? Rossi looked at Sauron with a sad expression, then turned to look to the side and behind. There, the second generation of the naval base, Belum, came over with several marines. Although I don't know who you are, you actually said that I won't keep my promise. Although this is true, it still makes me sad. Hearing Balumeb's familiar voice, Zoro immediately turned his head and looked over. What did you just say? Are you not going to keep your promise? It's already the last day before I agreed to be tied up here. Ha, it's really funny that the pirate hunter still believes what I said at that time. Balum held his stomach and laughed for a while, then turned to look at Rossi. However, I didn't expect anyone to guess what I was thinking. You dare to break into the naval base, so die together with this green algae head. Aim at them and fire. Balumbo waved his hand, and the soldiers behind him immediately raised their guns and pointed them at Rossi, Sauron and others. Nami's eyes widened and she quickly hid behind Luo Chi. Luffy on the side was holding his hat with one hand, not taking the spear of the Navy soldier opposite him seriously at all. Hey, no, are you really going to shoot? Zoro's eyes widened and he showed a frightened expression for the first time. Are you still holding on to your illusions at this point, Zoro? By the way, do you want to join us and become a pirate? If you are willing to join, we can help you get out of here alive. Rossi turned back to look at Zoro with a sly smile on his face. You cunning guy, that's all. As long as you can live, it doesn't matter if you become a villain. Big Pirate Luo Chi, I have joined you, please untie me. Zoro shouted. Relax, it's a beautiful idea. Fire for me. Bang, bang, bang. Following Balumeb's roar, the naval soldier suddenly pulled the trigger of the rifle in his hand. I don't want to die. Nami huddled up and almost hid her body behind Luo Chi. The corner of Luffy's mouth raised, and he wanted to rush forward and use the power of the rubber fruit to deflect the flying bullets. However, Luo Chi's movements must be faster. Fork shield. Luo Chi waved his right hand in front of him, and a giant fork made of silver-white energy suddenly appeared and defended everyone including himself. Bite, bite, bite. The bullet hit the fork shield, making a sound of metal colliding. When all the bullets were bounced, the fork shield was not damaged at all. It's amazing. It turns out that Luo Chi, you can also use Alu's moves. And can the fork be used like this? Luffy's eyes widened, and he immediately wanted to use the cross shield like a master. However, due to his lack of proficiency, he was not able to use the fork as a defensive shield like Luo Chi. He simply swung the energy fork to pierce the ground in front of him with holes. How is it possible? Why are bullets useless to them? What is that curved fork? Balloonbeard took a step back in horror. He couldn't understand the fork shield in front of Roche, and couldn't understand why the fork shield could stop the bullet. As expected of a pirate with a bounty of 800 million berries, how could bullets have any effect on you? However, your crew can actually use your tricks. You taught him, right? By the way, can you let me down from this pillar? Zoro laughed. You misunderstood. Luffy is the captain. As for me, I'm at most the vice captain. Roche chuckled, pulled out Kinpila from behind, swung a few knives and cut the rope tied to Zoro. Kinpila's blade, which emitted a cold light, immediately attracted Zoro's attention, but what he cared more about was Rock's words just now. What? You're not the captain? Zoro looked at Luffy in a daze. What qualifications does that man have to be the captain of the great pirate Razi? You'll know about this later. Razi smiled, sheathed the Kinpira, and dispersed the fork shield at the same time. A great pirate with a bounty of 800 million berries. Are you kidding? How could such a great pirate come to this town? Open fire, kill all these guys. When Barumber saw the fork shield disperse, his eyes lit up immediately. But no matter how he shouted, the soldiers behind him did not continue to fire. Barumber looked behind him in confusion, but saw that all the Navy soldiers behind him were shaking violently, and even their guns were a little unstable. Hey, what are you doing? Shoot! Barumber shouted loudly. No, he is really a pirate with a bounty of 800 million berries, we will die. A Navy soldier said tremblingly. Obviously, after Zoro's awakening, the Navy soldiers have also recognized Rosie's identity. Assholes, you cowards! Balloonbeard gritted his teeth, snatched a rifle from the soldier beside him, and wanted to continue shooting at Rosie's men. Stop it, you are no match for us. At this time, Luffy's eyes widened, and the energy of the gourmet cells on his body quickly condensing the upper body of a huge red ghost in front of Luffy. The red ghost stretched out his right hand to touch Belmybeer, and just patted his head simply. Belmybeer's eyes were directly frightened by the terrible deterrence of the red ghost and fainted. Not only Belmybeer, but even the Navy soldiers beside him were frightened and fell to the ground. What is this? Zoro said in surprise. The gourmet cell demon red ghost, the power that Rosie helped Luffy gain not long ago. Nami pursed her lips and looked at Luffy, feeling both envious and afraid of the power Luffy had gained. Envious of Luffy's ability to obtain powerful power from Rosie, but worried that if he obtained this power, he would be controlled by Rosie. The power you helped him obtain. Can this strange power also be obtained? Zoro looked at Rosie in surprise, and felt more and more that Rosie was a strange and powerful man. If you want, I can also help you obtain it. Of course, it is a different power from Luffy. Rosie smiled. Help me, I'm a swordsman. Speaking of which, the knife on your back is a big and sharp knife, right? Being able to have such a knife proves that you are also good at using a knife, right? Without the threat of the Navy soldiers, Zoro was naturally relieved. His eyes fell on the Kinpira behind Rosie, and his eyes were faintly shining. Maybe. Rosie shrugged and gave an ambiguous answer. Although he doesn't know Kendo now, considering the power of the system. Rosie feels that he is likely to master some Kendo power through Zoro in the future. Humph, you are so modest. No matter why you became a member of this kid's pirate group. But since you invited me, there is one thing I must tell you. I went to sea to become the world's #1 swordsman, even if I become a pirate. If I can't become a great swordsman in the future, you will have to apologize to me by cutting your stomach, Vice Captain Roche, Captain Luffy. Zoro raised the corners of his mouth and said with a grin. The world's #1 swordsman, hee, my partner should have such a goal. Luffy put his hands on his waist, not taking Zoro's threat seriously at all, but was very happy that Zoro joined. The world's #1 swordsman, he really knows how to brag. But since your goal is to be the #1 swordsman, where is your sword? Nami asked Zoro with her arms folded. Tisk, my knife was taken away by that second-generation Navy colonel. No, I have to get my knife back now. Saying that, Zoro turned around and tried to run towards the building inside the naval base. But just as he took a step, he was grabbed by the back of his collar by Rosie. What are you going to do? Zoro frowned and looked at Rosie impatiently. Nothing, I just wanted to remind you that you ran in the wrong direction. Rosie looked at Zoro with interest, and pointed at the gate in front of Zoro that led to the outside of the naval base. Although he knew that Zoro was a road idiot, Rosie still found it quite interesting to witness Zoro's strong road idiocy behavior. You actually ran outside the base, are you a road idiot? Nami's timely complaints made Zoro's forehead burst out with the, well, symbol. Ha ha ha, you were really funny, Zoro. Luffy also laughed. The unconcealed laughter continued to spread to various places in the naval base with the wind, and finally fell into the ears of the Navy Colonel Monka. Surround them for me, don't let any of them go. Accompanied by a roar, Axe King Monka came to the scene with a large number of Navy soldiers. After seeing his son lying on the ground, Monka's brows immediately knitted. Did you knock my son down? After ordering the soldiers to raise their rifles and aim at Luffy and his men, Monka strode to Rossi and the others. Yes, I knocked them down. They are really weak. I just released the Red Devil and they all fell down. Luffy scratched the back of his head and smiled at Monka. Such a smile was completely provocative in Monka's eyes. Although that stupid son is a waste, he was knocked down only because he was too weak. But you attacked my son without my consent. Are you provoking the greatest Colonel Monka? Monka roared, picked up the axe on his arm and smashed it towards Luffy's head. Luffy raised the corner of his mouth, and his right hand formed a claw and quickly punched Monka. Rubber rubber, fork, as Luffy shouted, his arm stretched out instantly, and at the same time, a silver-white fork condensed in his palm and hit Monka's axe. With a ding, Monka's arm with the axe instantly leaned back, and his body also retreated 2 steps backward. This guy, his arm can be stretched out. Did you teach him this, Rosie? Zoro asked in surprise. I didn't teach him this, it's Luffy's original ability. Rosie shook his head and said, Colonel Monka, are you okay? Colonel Monka was repelled. How is it possible? Who is that kid? He can actually repel Colonel Monka. Wait, look at that black-haired guy, isn't that Rosie the one who has been making a lot of noise recently? What, Rosie, how could that pirate with a bounty of hundreds of millions appear here? A marine recognized Rosie, and shouts of surprise immediately spread in the square of the naval base. Shut up, you weaklings. Calm down, the bounty is just a little higher. As long as I'm here, he'll be arrested. Monka swung the axe in his hand and knocked away the timid marine soldier closest to him, and his angry rebuke spread to the ears of every marine soldier. Seeing this scene, the marine soldiers who were originally scared trembled even more. Hey, you fool actually attacked your companions. Luffy frowned and yelled at Monka unhappily. Humph, they are just a group of weak subordinates, how can they be my companions? Who do you think I am? I'm the greatest Colonel Monka. Everyone, raise your guns, otherwise don't blame me for punishing you. Monka raised his axe high, as if he had completely forgotten that he had just been repelled by Luffy. Zango's hypnosis is really powerful, it can make an ordinary marine so proud. Single quote. Rosie shook his head, and couldn't help but admire the hypnotic skills of the Black Cat pirates. Facing the trembling Navy soldiers who pointed their guns at him, Rosie raised his hand and snapped his fingers. The next moment, several golden ripples spread out beside him, and a number of cannons sprang out from the ripples. Awesome, Rosie, can you actually use Captain Drake's ability? Can you also summon an invincible fleet like her? The golden ripples around Rosie naturally did not escape Luffy's eyes. Looking at the cannons, Luffy's eyes instantly turned golden. This kid is so excited, what kind of weird ability does this thing have? Zoro muttered strangely. A certain female pirate Captain Drake's cannon. Nami frowned slightly, I'd have told this man if he could use her ability. No, he shouldn't be able to use the power of all heroic spirits, right? Rossi did not respond to Nami's doubts. He transformed into Drake's flintlock gun and pointed it at Menka and others, and said with a smile. I advise you to put down your weapons. You are pointing a gun at me, but I am pointing a cannon at you. Hearing this, the Navy soldiers who were already quite wary of Luochi involuntarily took a step back. It's ridiculous, it's just some weird devil fruit ability, how is it possible? Boom. Before Menka could finish his words, he was directly interrupted by a huge burst of gunfire. The fort next to Luochi opened fire instantly, and the golden flash directly destroyed the huge statue of Menka not far away. Afterwards, the golden laser continued to blast into the buildings of the naval base, causing a house to collapse. It's awesome, the fruit is Drake's cannon. Now, Luo Qi, let's summon those fleets too. I want to see those fleets. Luffy ran to Luo Qi in excitement, even forgetting the Marines who were stunned on the spot because of Luo Qi's bombardment. Luffy will have a chance in the future. Now let's solve the naval problem at hand. Speaking of which, I admire you more and more, Colonel Menka. Generally, everyone should know that he is not my opponent after seeing the attack I just made. But you, what kind of power supports you to come to me bravely and look so fierce? Rossi turned his head and looked at Menka who was standing in front of him. Asshole, I can't spare you, you actually destroyed my statue. That symbolizes my greatness. Menka roared angrily and raised the axe in his hand to hit Luo Qi. Asshole, don't bother me watching the Drake cannon. Rubber, foot knife. Luffy kicked out with a horizontal kick, and the rubber body made his legs instantly lengthen. When he came to Monka, the shadow of a huge table knife appeared on Luffy's legs. Luffy's attack hit Monka's axe. This time, it not only knocked Monka away, but even caused the axe in his hand to shatter. Uru's foot sword. Among the skills Luffy originally acquired, the hand sword should be the only one, right? Single quote. Should I say that he is worthy of being the destined son of this world? His fighting talent is absolutely top-notch. Single quote. Luo Qi nodded secretly and watched as Luffy rushed straight towards Menka and punched Menka in the abdomen. 5 consecutive nail punches. Bang, bang, bang. Luffy's fist hit Monka's abdomen, and the delayed punch force made Monka's body continue to rise into the air. And after reaching an altitude of 10 meters, it hit the ground heavily. Being hit by powerful attacks continuously, Menka, who was not strong to begin with, closed his eyes instantly. Even if he doesn't die, it will be difficult for him to carry out normal activities. Alu's moves are indeed very powerful. I don't know how many nail punches I can use now with all my strength. Luffy scratched his head, and after glancing at the trembling Marines, he turned to look at Rossi and the others. Everyone, let's leave here. We have nothing to do here anymore. As soon as he finished speaking, Nami and Zoro's voices immediately sounded. Nami, idiot, wait until you find the treasure before leaving. Zoro, asshole, I haven't gotten my knife back yet. Navy headquarters. Marshal's office. Marshal Sengoku, is there any news about Gion and the fool Razi? Admiral candidate, Kaji, known as the T-Dolphin, pushed open the door of his office and quickly came to Sengoku. It's a trick on you. Sengoku held the phone's microphone and raised his head to glance at Jaji. He didn't say anything about Jaji's reckless behavior. After all, it is a recognized fact in the Navy that Cake likes Gion, and at this moment, Gion is still caught by Rochi and missing. We have found Razi. The man left the town of Shields in the East China Sea. We defeated Captain Monka with a pirate named Luffy. It can be inferred from those Navy confessions that Rossi joined this pirate group called Luffy. I believe that as long as we find this Luffy, we will be able to locate Rossi and Gion. Hearing this, Jaji's eyes immediately burst into light. Great, we finally found the trace of that guy. Marshal of the Warring States period, let me go to the East China Sea. I will personally rescue Gion and let her escape from Luo Qi's clutches. Jaji clenched his fists and said excitedly. I know you're excited, Gia, but you have other tasks. Leave this mission to Garp. He has already set off to the East China Sea. Warring States comforted Jaji for a few words, and then suddenly shouted into the phone bug microphone in his hand. Garp, look what kind of grandson you have trained. He dared to become Luo Qi's captain. That man was the man who killed the Tianlong people. And your grandson seems to have become Luo Qi's apprentice and learned some weird tricks from him. Aren't you worried that the world government will also execute your grandson? Jaji blinked and realized that Sengoku was talking to Kapong. There was silence for a while among the phone calls, and after a while, Karp's voice came over. Sengoku, give me some time and don't reveal the relationship between Luffy and Luo Qi yet. I will find Luffy and Rossi myself and teach them a lesson. Garp said in a deep voice. Obviously, he was quite angry that Rossi came to Luffy. For your sake, let's not make their relationship public for the time being. But you have to speed up, Garp, and you're not allowed to be lazy this time. However, Luffy seems to have strange powers after beating the Marine captain. For him, I will offer a reward of 20 million berries. Do you have any objection? Warring States said, you can take care of this. Don't worry, I will definitely find Luochi and rescue both Luffy and Gion from him. Carp's words are unequivocal and unequivocal. Okay, I'll leave it to you then. Warring States nodded with satisfaction. After saying that, Sangguo hung up the phone. They couldn't imagine it anyway. At this time, Gion was no longer in Luochi's hands. At this moment, Gion was being led by Reiju towards a certain naval base. On the vast sea, a ship pulled by a giant snail is sailing quickly. That Rossi actually joined the pirate group of rookie pirates. Straw Hat Luffy, what kind of charm does this man have? Vinsmoke Reiju frowned slightly and looked at the newspaper she just got from Newsbird in her hand with a puzzled expression. You said, Rossi, where is he now? At this time, a slightly weak voice sounded next to Reiju's ears. You're awake. Don't worry, Lieutenant General Gion, the man who captured you has left. Reiju turned around and faced Gion, who had woken up from a coma, with a smile. Have you left? Gion pursed his lips. She actually let me go. Rossi once said that he still admired you, so he just took away your knife. My sword. Gion was stunned for a moment, and then he realized that he didn't have Jinpyra in his hand. That man doesn't know how to use a sword. Why did he take my sword? Who knows? Reiju shrugged. Maybe it's because of the value of your knife, or maybe it's revenge for hunting him down during that time. That's it. I didn't expect that man to be so powerful. It's such a pity. Gion sighed. She really felt sorry. During the days of chasing Rossi, he did not do as much evil as other pirates. It can be said that the only evil thing he did was to attack the Tianlong people. The act of arresting her but only using her as a means of escape also made Gion not have much hatred for Luochi. Huh, what is this? At this time, Gion suddenly noticed the word, Zheng, on his thigh. Of course, she didn't know the word, she was simply surprised that such symbols appeared on her thighs. Well, I don't think you want to know. The corners of Reiju's mouth raised, revealing a smile that made Gion feel uncomfortable. Immediately, Reiju told Gion about Luochi's explanation of the word. No. No way, that man did that to me, and this symbol represents how many times she did it to me. Gion's eyes widened in surprise, and he quickly stretched out his hands to check his body. Well, I'm not too sure about this. Chapter 11. After all, I'm just a hostage captured by Luochi like you. If you want to know the answer, maybe you can go to Luochi to ask, and maybe you can get your knife. Reiju smiled, turned around and sat on the sofa nearby. That guy, I still think he is a good guy. I will never forgive him. Even though it was Gion, his cheeks could not help but turn crimson at this time, and he vowed to arrest Luochi. At the same time, Luochi, who was cursed by her in her heart, was sailing leisurely on the sea heading to Orange Town. Hey, Luochi, can't you summon the golden deer? Do we have to take this boat? Luffy rolled over from the boat and looked at Rossi expectantly. Yes, Rossi, since you can use Captain Drake's power, you should be able to summon the huge golden deer. With a ship like that, we can reach Orange Town faster and find that Bucky. Nami sat down next to Rossi and asked with concern. Thinking of the message about Bucky found in the naval base, Nami felt furious. In her opinion, the treasure taken away by Bucky should originally belong to her. I heard you talk about the golden deer in the fleet just now. What on earth is that? Zoro also looked over. Really, didn't I just say that? Maintaining the appearance of Drake's ship to the outside world will always consume my energy. The vast sea, do you want to tire me to death? Luochi shook his head and once again rejected everyone's proposal. In the vast sea, if the golden deer were used to sail, Luochi might have collapsed before he reached the next island. If you wait until your physical strength is exhausted before encountering an enemy, it will be even more disadvantageous. What? It's so boring. Luffy smacked his mouth and looked at Rossi with disgust. Luochi chuckled twice, raised his hand and landed a loving fist on Luffy's forehead. It hurts. I'm obviously made of rubber, why do I still feel pain? Luffy hugged the big bag on his head and shouted strangely. Even if it is made of rubber, you will still receive real damage if you are hit by a fist wrapped in armed hockey. Luo Qi raised his fist, deliberately letting Luffy see the dark energy in his fist. Armed hockey. What is that? Is it also the power of a certain heroic spirit? Nami asked curiously. After seeing that Rossi can use the power of a ruined drake, Nami now even doubts that Rossi can use the power of more heroic spirits. It does not require the power of a heroic spirit to use armament hockey. To be precise, armed hockey and knowledge hockey are potential abilities that everyone possesses. As long as you undergo intense practice, it is possible to master. Luo Qi talked eloquently and soon popularized the power and function of three-color hockey to Luffy, Zoro and Nami. The crew of these Straw Hat Pirates can already master the power. Of course, Rossi hopes that Luffy and others can quickly master the power of hockey while mastering the heroic spirit template. Quote. I see, Grandpa hit me with his armed hockey. No wonder I feel pain. But Luo Qi, you are really powerful. You can actually use Grandpa's power. Luffy sighed. Armed hockey, wisdom hockey, overlord hockey, I don't know if I can master these powers. Zoro gripped the handle of the knife tightly. He was particularly concerned about the power that could make him stronger. If you are interested, Zoro, I can tell you my experience in practicing hockey. However, the practice of domineering will not be achieved overnight. It will definitely take a long time of practice to master it. Instead of hockey, Zoro, are you interested in mastering the power of a certain heroic spirit? Rossi turned his head and looked at Zoro with interest. Should we start? Rossi, you want Sauron to choose the power of heroic spirits, right? Hearing Luo Qi's words, Luffy immediately looked over excitedly. Although he had already chosen the template of a heroic spirit, his last experience made Luffy particularly interested in Luo Qi's heroic spirit space. At this moment, seeing that Luo Qi was interested in opening the heroic space for Sauron, he was naturally very happy. That's right, Zoro, if you are ready, I will take you into the space of heroic spirits. Luo Qi nodded slightly and said to Sauron. 6. A heroic spirit, although I don't know what kind of power it is, I am ready. Zoro gripped the long knife tightly with a firm look on his face. Great answer, let's get started now. With that said, Luo Qi raised his hand and snapped his fingers. The next second, Sauron only felt a tremor in the space, and they came into a dark space. Between him and Luo Qi, a translucent panel was suspended in midair. Let me see, let me see. Zoran's three attributes are swordsman, drunkard, and road fool. Ha, Liu Kai, he's actually a Liu Kai. Ha ha ha, Zoro, look, your directionality is even recorded in the heroic spirit space. Luffy covered his abdomen and laughed wildly. He didn't notice Zoro's increasingly dark complexion. Asshole, how could I be directionally challenged? Rosie, is there something wrong with your thing? Zoro pulled up Rosie's collar and yelled in great displeasure. Rosie could even see a faint red on Zoro's face. I think it's right. After all, when you were at the naval base, you wanted to go inside, but ended up going outside the base, didn't you? That was just an accident. There must be something wrong with your thing. I'm not directionally challenged at all. Hearing Zoro's words, Rosie shook his head with some regret. Don't struggle, Zoro. We all know that you are a road idiot. Don't worry, we won't look down on you. If you really don't want to admit it, you can click on the word, road idiot. Maybe you can see all your road idiot behaviors in the past. Hearing this, Zoro's eyes widened immediately. What, can you see my previous behaviors? Luffy, this is interesting, Zoro, let's try it. As he said, Luffy pulled Zoro's hand and pressed it on the word, road idiot. Wait, before Zoro finished speaking, a screen suddenly popped up above the word, road idiot. On the screen, Zoro was fully demonstrating his road idiot talent. Ha ha ha, isn't this you, Zoro, you are still not a road idiot. Luffy laughed again. Looking at the screen constantly switching pictures of Zoro's road idiot behavior, Luffy even rolled on the ground directly. But, get out of here. Even the carefree Zoro couldn't handle the exposure of his past dark history to others. He raised his arm and waved it at the screen, but he only saw his hand passing through the screen and finally landing on the three words, Black Death, under the swordsman attribute. Suddenly, the surrounding space trembled. A few seconds later, the three of them came to a desert. And a few dozen meters away from Luochi and others, a man with long black hair in a high ponytail, wearing a purple snake-patterned kimono and a long sword on his waist was standing upright. Where is this, Luochi? Who is that man? Zoro frowned, and his hands unconsciously pressed on the hilt of the sword at his waist. The swordsman's intuition made him keenly aware of the cold murderous intent of the man not far away. You just press the kuroshibo of the swordsman attribute. This is the venue for demonstrating the swordsmanship of Kokushibo, also known as Yan Sheng of Jigyu. Look carefully, Zoro, look carefully at the sword art of this upper string, the dark night fierce moon, called the breath of the moon. As Razi's voice fell, Kokushibo quickly drew his sword and swung it at the void in front of him. One form dark moon Yao no Gong. The II slash, which was so fast that it was almost invisible, crossed out, forming a slash like a crescent moon arc. And above this slash, there were many small crescent moon arcs rotating continuously. Such a fast sword slash, this man is not simple. Zoro stared at Kokushibo, and just the slash just now made Zoro feel a little threatened now. Kuroshibo's breath of the moon is a sword art focused on killing, a technique for killing. It is about slashing out a large amount of sword energy in a short period of time. And around the sword energy there will be small arc blades attached. If someone who is not experienced in combat faces the breath of the moon, defeat is the end. Zoro, open your eyes and see clearly, and understand the power of Kokushibo. Roki explained the breath of the moon to Zoro while placing his hand on Kinpira. He understood that when Zoro inherited the template of the heroic spirit of Kokushibo, he would also learn the sword art called Breath of the Moon. While Roki was talking, Kokushibo had already used the landform Tokyo Lone Moon Mujian of the Breath of the Moon. His concentrated and fast slashing formed multiple crescent arcs that cut through the air and swept towards Zoro, causing Zoro to unconsciously raise his sword to resist the phantom slash. Haha, the breath of the moon, it can actually make a flying strike. Don't worry, Rosie, I will soon understand this sword art. Zoro raised his head, his eyes full of determination. Although the sword energy that just passed by him did not cause an actual collision, the momentum of the slash was real. For Zoro, who cannot release the flying slash now, the power of the moon breathing is a higher level of swordsmanship. Keep watching, Zoro, the next is the highlight. After Rosie finished speaking, the sword in Kokushibo's hand suddenly changed, forming a longer and alien blade with staggered blades. Moon-breathing 7th form Evil Mirror Moon Reflection. Kokushibo swung the evolved demon blade, forming 5 giant shock waves that extended along the ground and quickly passed in front. Compared with the 6th form just now, it was more than twice as fast. So powerful, but why can his sword still change? Luffy tilted his head and asked in a strange way. Kuroshibo is not a human, but a demon. He has a strong vitality and recovery ability. Even his sword is made of his flesh and blood. As Kuroshibo releases his power, his sword named Hollow Crying God will become a blade of the opposite gender like this. And the breath of the moon, starting from the 7th form, is the sword skill after Kuroshibo releases his power. Roche touched his chin and explained to Luffy and Zoro. Ghost, no wonder this Kuroshibo has 6 eyes. Roche, if Zoro inherits Kuroshibo's power, will he also become a demon? Nami asked. If you can gain power, it doesn't matter even if you grow 6 eyes. Zoro stared at Kuroshibo's sword moves and said silently. Don't worry, if Zoro chooses Kokushibo, he will get Kokushibo's power, but he won't have 6 eyes. After all, choosing Kokushibo doesn't mean you will become him. By getting his heroic spirit template, you have a chance to inherit his devilish recovery ability, but you can't get the power of immortality. Although you can't be immortal, you can get rid of the weakness of not being able to walk under the sun. Roki smiled and explained the details of Kokushibo's heroic spirit template that he had just obtained from the system. When the word, immortality, was mentioned, Nami and others were naturally surprised again. Of course, Kokushibo's sword moves would not stop because of the surprise of several people. I saw Kokushibo jump to a height of 10 meters, and his aura instantly reached the commanding heights. Moon-breathing 10 6th form Moon Rainbow Lonely Moon. As Kokushibo shouted, he swung the long sword in his hand from top to bottom. In an instant, dozens of giant blade wind strikes accompanied by countless crescent blades fell from the sky, covering the area of 100 meters in radius. It also covered the place where Luochi and others were. Ah! Nami exclaimed, and because of fear, she couldn't help but open her hands and hug Luochi's arms tightly in her arms. Luochi raised his eyebrows and looked at Nami beside him. Although Nami is not in the state of 2 years later, Luochi still feels that the softness of her heart is not comparable to that of ordinary people. Okay Nami, I have said that those are illusions and will not cause real harm to us. You don't have to be so scared. Having said that, I am happy to lend you my arm. After all, it's pretty good to be hugged by you like this. Luochi had a smile on his face and even shrugged his arms deliberately. You guy, Nami snorted and quickly let go of Razi's arm with a blushing face. That being said, looking at the smile on Razi's face, Nami felt that Rosie might not be that scary for no reason. No, what are you thinking, Nami? Single quote. This man is a pirate with a bounty of 800 million berries. Single quote. Don't be fooled by his appearance. Single quote. Nami patted her face, and when she opened her eyes again, her eyes had regained clarity. Rosie, who saw this, could only smile helplessly. It seems that I still have to talk to Nami. Single quote. Otherwise, there is no way for her to get the heroic spirit template quickly so that she can train faster. Single quote. Rosie shook his head and looked at Zoro, who was lost in thought because of the end of Kokushibo's demonstration. Zoro, think about it later. Matsumoto Rengaku with the attribute of drunkard, and Zaraki Kenpachi with the attribute of directionally challenged, are still waiting for your choice. Hearing Razi's words, Zoro slowly turned his head and his eyes fell on the other two names on the translucent panel. Matsumoto Rengaku and Zaraki Kenpachi, I wonder if they are swordsmen. If they are swordsmen, how about compared with Kokushibo? Zoro exhaled, and after taking a look at the attribute of directionally challenged, above Zaraki Kenpachi's name, he raised his hand and slapped the name of Matsumoto Rengaku. The two words, directionally challenged, ultimately made Zoro keep Zaraki Kenpachi for last. After a familiar tremor, a mature woman with long orange wavy hair, a charming figure, and a short knife on her waist. At this moment, the woman named Matsumoto Rengaku was sitting at the table, constantly putting wine into her mouth. In just a short moment, several bottles entered her stomach. She's really an alcoholic, Zoro. She looks a lot like you, ha ha ha. Luffy thought of Zoro drinking in a restaurant in town, and compared it with Rengaku Matsumoto's drinking, and immediately laughed. Asshole, you don't have the right to laugh at me. I heard that there is a foodie in your heroic spirit template. He, yes, I chose the foodie, Uru. Speaking of which, why don't you also choose the drinker attribute Matsumoto Rengaku? I think it would be very interesting. Luffy smiled. Hearing this, Zoro frowned slightly, looked ahead and came to a new scene, and pulled out the short sword from his waist to face Rengaku Matsumoto, who was facing several monsters with bone masks in front of him. Although he hasn't seen Matsumoto Rengaku's combat skills yet, he always feels that the Matsumoto Rengaku in front of him is far less suitable for him than Kuroshimo. This is a swordsman's intuition. Let's take a look first. After Zoro finished speaking, Matsumoto Rengaku also brandished a short sword and rushed towards the monster named Hollow in front of him. After several sharp slashes, Matsumoto Rengaku's blade fell directly on the face of Mingshu. The powerful force instantly shattered the masks of several virtual people, and their bodies gradually turned into black particles and dissipated. Severe slashes are also very powerful, but compared to Hei Shimo just now, her swordsmanship doesn't seem to be very good. Zoro crossed his arms and frowned slightly. You can't say that. In terms of strength, she is much stronger than Hei Shimo. And besides swordsmanship, she also has other special powers. Of course, the most special thing is her weapon called Zanpakuto. Luochi smiled. As soon as the welcome was over, 3 Daxu with a height of more than 50 meters suddenly appeared in front of Matsumoto Rengaku. Matsumoto Rengaku raised his eyebrows and gently clasped his left hand on the handle of the knife. Croon, Grey Cat, Rengaku Matsumoto groaned, and the blade of the short sword in his hand instantly turned into a puff of smoke made of sand. She was seen gently waving the short knife with only the handle left, and the smoke in front of her suddenly rushed towards Daxu in front, and soon reached Daxu's head. Rengoku Matsumoto swung the handle of the knife again, and a crack instantly appeared in Daxu's neck that was touched by the dust, and it broke apart in the extremely surprised eyes of Zoro and others. What is going on? What happened to that knife? Zoro said in shock. Zanpakuto, Hinata, this is a weapon exclusive to Matsumoto Rengoku. It has 2 stages of liberation, and what you just saw is the first stage of liberation. The effects after liberation are as you can see before your eyes. Zoro, if you choose Rengoku Matsumoto, you will be able to obtain her weapons. Of course, whether you can liberate it depends on your ability and your compatibility with Matsumoto Rengoku. Luochi smiled. While speaking, Matsumoto Rengoku showed off his power called Kido again. Seeing the power that could produce 4 winds, flames, thunder and lightning and other energy just by chanting a spell, Luffy's eyes immediately turned into star eyes. Nami crossed her arms, held her chin with one hand and sighed. What a powerful woman, Zoro. Why don't you just choose this woman's template? Not only can it release fire and thunder, but even the knife can turn into smoke to attack the enemy. Her methods seem to be more powerful than Heishimo just now. Upon hearing this, Zoro didn't say anything, but Luffy, whose eyes were shining just now, shook his head at Nami. Nami, let Zoro make his own choice. Although Matsumoto Rengoku seems to be stronger than Black Death Mo, he may not be suitable for Zoro. Huh, Luffy, why do you say that? Didn't you think Matsumoto Rengoku was stronger just now? You may not know if you haven't experienced the selection of heroic spirit templates. When Luochi asked me to choose between Alu, Drake and that rubber man, I vaguely felt that Alu was the most suitable for me. Quote. Luffy paused and said under Nami's doubtful eyes. Of course I want Captain Drake's power, but I obviously feel that I can't use her power well. Even if you make a forced choice, you may not be able to properly channel this power as Luochi said. On the contrary, Uru's power made me feel an obvious attraction. It seems that as long as I choose Uru's heroic spirit template, I can quickly develop this power. Hearing this, Nami looked at Luochi in confusion. That's true. The choice of heroic spirits still has to be left to me. Perhaps, a force that originally seemed relatively weak will be of much greater value than expected after being selected. Luochi smiled. Well, I'm just talking casually anyway. It's up to you, Zoro, to choose. Nami shrugged and turned to look at Zoro. At this time, the phantom of Matsumoto Rengoku had disappeared. After thinking for a while, Zoro reached out and touched the name of Kenpachi Zaraki. Tisk, let me see what kind of power this person with poor directions has. Single quote. As Zoro muttered in his heart, the surrounding environment changed again. In the blink of an eye, everyone came to a quiet street. Zoro looked up and soon saw a tall, fierce-looking, hedgehog-like strong man behind him. In the eyes of Rosie and others, the man kept bumping around on the street, but after a few minutes, he returned to the original place. Tisk, he is really a person with poor directions. Zoro crossed his arms and looked at the projection of Kenpachi Zaraki opposite with disdain. How dare you say that? You are much better than him in terms of directionality. No, I should say that there may not be a person in this world who is as directionally challenged as you. Roche glanced at Zoro, his eyes full of speechlessness. Although Kenpachi Zaraki is directionally challenged, at least he will not walk back and forth in front of his destination, but Zoro is completely capable of doing such a thing. What did you say? How could I be more directionally challenged than him? From what you said, you admit that you are directionally challenged, Zoro. No, I didn't say that. Roche, let's duel, just in time for me to see your swordsmanship. Haha, forget about dueling, you still have a choice to make now. Roche snapped his fingers, and the scene changed again. 1. This time, everyone came to a silent battlefield. On the battlefield, in addition to Kenpachi Zaraki carrying a long sword, there was also a tall and thin man holding a double moon sickle. Hey, come and chop me first. Kenpachi Zaraki opened his shirt and said to the enemy in front of him with a proud face. Let the enemy chop himself. Is this guy okay? Luffy tilted his head, his face full of doubts. But soon, the doubt on Luffy's face turned into shock. Middle. The thin and tall man's sickle was heavily draped over Kenpachi Zaraki, instantly stirring up a hurricane. Turn. This shows how powerful the previous attack was, but even such a blow did not leave any scars on Kenpachi Zaraki's body. Group. The energy in Kenpachi Zaraki's body is too strong. This energy, called spiritual pressure, automatically forms a hard protective barrier on the surface of his skin. If the slash is not up to standard, it can't even break through Kenpachi Zaraki's defense. In addition, this energy makes his slash particularly powerful. Accompanied by Luoqi's explanation, Kenpachi Zaraki slowly raised the long sword in his hand. Swish. With one slash, Kenpachi Zaraki's long sword cut through the air and landed on the enemy. With a boom, the enemy was instantly crushed to the ground, and the powerful force even caused the surrounding earth to begin to break. So strong. It's just an ordinary slash, why is it so strong? Zoro stared at Kenpachi Zaraki with wide eyes, and it was hard to imagine that the road dead man in front of him could have such a strong power. As if he felt that one blow was not enough, Kenpachi Zaraki raised his sword again, but this time he chose to hold the sword with both hands. Kendo double cut. Boom. Kenpachi Zaraki's long sword fell, and the enemy who had just climbed up fell to the ground again. And this time, the shaking of the earth was many times stronger than before. Kenpachi Zaraki's swordsmanship is the swordsmanship of holding the sword with both hands. He enjoys fighting. In order to prevent the enemy from dying too quickly, he will use the sword with one hand and fight with brute force. When he holds the sword with both hands, it is difficult for anyone to catch his slash. Rosie patted Zoro on the shoulder and continued. In addition, Kenpachi Zaraki, like Rengoku Matsumoto, has mastered the power called Zanpakuto. That is the real terrifying power of Kenpachi Zaraki. Zoro swallowed his saliva and looked at the long sword in Kenpachi Zaraki's hand with difficulty. This man, the slash just now was so powerful. If he uses that sword again, how powerful will he be? As if to answer Zoro's question, Kenpachi Zaraki suddenly raised the long sword in his hand, and the spiritual pressure on his body burst out instantly. The powerful spiritual pressure even formed an extremely oppressive energy skull behind him. Devour it, you say? Kenpachi Zaraki shouted, and the image of the originally slender long sword suddenly changed. It turned into a beheading sword with a very long handle. At this moment, a meteorite fell rapidly from the sky. Even though they knew that what they saw was an illusion, Nami and the others were shocked when they saw the meteorite in the sky. Ha! Kenpachi Zaraki raised his Zanpakuto after the Shikai and swung it at the meteorite quickly. The powerful force even shattered the meteorite. Seeing this scene, except for Rosie, who had known the power of Kenpachi Zaraki for a long time, Zoro and the others suddenly widened their eyes. So strong, can you break a meteorite with a sword? Zoro's mouth was in an O shape, and he was shocked beyond words. Remember what I said before, that the Zanpakuto can be released in 2 stages. Chopping meteorites is still too easy for Zaraki Kenpachi. Luoqi smiled and said. The next moment, Zaraki Kenpachi's body once again erupted with huge spiritual pressure, and his whole person and his Zanpakuto changed under this spiritual pressure. The front end of the beheading sword was broken. Although it was a broken sword, the power of the sword was even more powerful. At the same time, Zaraki Kenpachi's skin completely turned blood red, and he looked like an evil ghost from a distance. Roar! Zaraki Kenpachi roared and waved forward with the broken sword in his hand. In an instant, the city in front of him turned into powder and dissipated. Hey, now, Rosie, which heroic spirit template do you think Sauron should choose? Luffy poked Luoqi's waist with his hand and looked curiously at Zoro, who was directly opposite him. At this moment, Zoro was looking straight at the panel in front of him. To be precise, he looked at the names of the swordsman, Haishimo, and the road Kai, Zaraki Kenpachi on the panel. Sorry Luffy, as the holder of the heroic spirit template, I can only explain and cannot interfere with Zoro's final choice. Luoqi shook his head and said regretfully. The system gave him the power of a heroic spirit, but it also gave him some restrictions. Whether it's Luffy, Zoro, or future partners, Rosie cannot forcefully advise on their choices. He hoped that Zoro would choose Zaraki Kenpachi's heroic spirit template. In this way, he will definitely be able to obtain Zaraki Kenpachi's power. With his current strength, it may be possible to perform the ultimate kaikai of Kenpachi Zaraki's Zanpakuto, not to mention the kaikai. Really, that's a shame. Luffy said. Nami lowered her head, looked at Sauron, and then at Razi, her eyes shining with thought. That Zaraki Kenpachi is so strong, he can actually crush meteorites. Single quote. I wonder if Rossi also has such power. Single quote. If he has such power, can I really steal his treasure and leave unharmed? Single quote. Thinking that stealing Luochi's financial report might cause Luochi to slash her with his sword, Nami's body couldn't help but tremble. Luochi glanced at Nami, and he was able to skillfully use the haki of knowledge and information, and he keenly felt the fear in Nami's heart. Really, am I that scary? Single quote. It looks like I need to talk to her carefully. Single quote. Rossi shook his head, reached out and took out an orange gemstone necklace and handed it to Nami. Huh, Razi, what are you doing? Is this for me? Seeing the sparkling necklace, Nami recovered from her fearful state instantly. Yes, this gem is quite valuable. If you like treasures, you will probably like it. Of course I like it, but why did you suddenly give me a gem necklace? Are you planning to use the necklace to pay me for being your navigator? I will pay the fees for serving as a navigator in cash. I gave this gem necklace to you. As for why I gave it to you, I think you seem to be frightened by this illusion space, so use this to change your mood. Rossi shrugged and put the necklace into Nami's hand. Of course he could see that Nami's fear was directed at himself, but he didn't point it out. Rossi understood Nami very well. Although he was stronger than the dragon, he was a wanted criminal with a bounty of 800 million berries. How could Nami, who didn't like pirates, bring a dangerous man like him, whom she had just met for a short time, to Kokoja village? It's normal to feel afraid of him when you can't leave. Thank you then. The corners of Nami's mouth raised, and she raised her hand to put the necklace on her neck. As long as you are happy, I still have some collections here. I will find an opportunity for you to see them later. Luochi smiled. Let Nami see that the collection is fake, and talking to her is Luochi's real purpose. Ha. I have decided, Luochi. I want to choose the heroic spirit template of Hey Death Mo. After several minutes of hesitation, Sauron finally raised his hand and patted the name of Black Death Mo. The next moment, a faint blue light enveloped Soren's body and left a mysterious sword-shaped badge on the skin around his heart. Bite. Nanuro Azoro made a choice, obtained the template of the swordsman, Black Death Mo, and learned the initial skills of Black Death Mo. Through training and becoming stronger, he can learn more heroic spirit template skills. Note: consuming devil fruit for your partner can speed up the process of understanding the heroic spirit template skills, and even the secret skills. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the Swordsman, Black Death Mo template and the Road Kai, Zaraki Kenpachi template, and understanding all the skills of the heroic spirit template. Note: although the host can understand all the skills of the heroic spirit template, whether the skills can be used is linked to the host's own strength. I'm lucky. Although Zoro chose Black Death Mo, I randomly found Zaraki Kenpachi's template. Single quote. The system prompts made the corners of Luochi's mouth curl up. Hey, did you choose Haishimo? It's such a pity. I obviously want to see Zaraki Kenpachi's power in the future. Luffy put his hands on the back of his head and said with regret. At this moment, the illusion has disappeared, and everyone has returned to the ship. Kenpachi Zaraki's power is indeed powerful, and I hesitated for a long time. But I always feel that I may be more suitable to use the power of Black Death Mo than Kenpachi Zaraki. Luffy, if you want someone to use Zaraki Kenpachi's power, maybe you can ask Luochi. Since he can use Drake's power, he should also be able to use Zaraki Kenpachi's power. Zoro exhaled, closed his eyes and began to feel the new power in his body. Really, Rossi, can you really use Zaraki Kenpachi's power? Luffy threw himself in front of Luochi, looking at Luochi with sparkling eyes. Haha, it can be used. After Luochi felt the power belonging to Zaraki Kenpachi in his body, he opened his mouth and said to Luffy. Although he cannot fully use Zaraki Kenpachi's power, with his current strength, he can still do it with the initial use of Zaraki Kenpachi's power. Great, can you show off the power of chopping meteorites just now? Speaking of which, can you transform Zaraki Kenpachi's Zanpakuto? Luffy asked curiously. However, as soon as he finished speaking, Nami grabbed his collar. Idiot Luffy, don't let Rossi use sword skills that can crush meteorites here. Are you trying to capsize our little boat? Nami yelled angrily. What does it matter? Even if the ship capsizes, don't we still have Luochi here? Luffy, didn't Rossi say before that summoning Drake's ship requires stamina, which is not practical at all on the sea? But, we are not far from our destination now, so it shouldn't matter. We're not far from our destination. Wait, are we already going to Orange Town? Nami raised her eyes and looked into the distance, and sure enough she saw the looming island deep in the sea. Judging from the heading, it was indeed Orange Town. Since we are already going to Orange Town, we can't let Luochi show off his power of crushing meteorites. Once that kind of power is shown, there will be a lot of movement. If we scare away the Bucky pirates, we won't be able to get their treasure. Luffy, Zoro, you two row the boat for me quickly, we are going to Orange Town now. Nami waved her hand and gave orders directly to Zoro and Luffy. What? I'm the captain. Also, why doesn't Raza need to row a boat? Luffy muttered and looked at Razi dissatisfied. No way, there are only 2 oars here, just enough for you and Zoro to paddle. Stop talking nonsense and move quickly, Nami said as she put the paddle directly into the hands of Luffy and Zoro, who were realizing their own power. Just kidding, Nami didn't dare to let Razi row the boat based on Rosie's strength alone. What's more, she still remembered that Luochi had just said that he wanted to show her his collection of treasures. Thinking of this, Nami couldn't help but rub her hands and look at Razi, her eyes turning into Barry's symbol. It's okay to row a boat, but I have a question. Zoro looked at Razi and asked. Your Excellency, Vice Captain, I felt my power carefully just now. Breathing according to that strange breathing method, I can feel the strength of my body getting stronger. But for Hey Death Mo's swordsmanship, I can only remember how to use the first 6 moves. I have no idea about the last 6 movements of Moon Breath. Does it mean that I need to increase my strength before I can remember these sword shapes? Hearing this, Luochi nodded and said, the last 6 moves of Black Death Mo's Breath of the Moon require his strength as a ghost to truly exert its power. In other words, you need to understand the power of the Black Death Mugi before you can master the next 6 moves of Moon Breath. As for how to further master the power of Hey Death Mo, you need to practice continuously, especially using the power of Hey Death Mo. Of course, if I use the Devil Fruit to strengthen the hero template on you, your understanding of the power of Kokushibo will be improved. If you are lucky, you can even transform into a mimic hero and use the power of Kokushibo more perfectly. But I think, with your talent, you don't need to consume the 2 devil fruits in my hand. I plan to use these 2 devil fruits on partners with weaker combat talents. At this point, Roche turned his head slightly and glanced at Nami. I see, I understand. But what do you mean by mimic hero? Can I turn into the appearance of Kokushibo? Zoro frowned and asked. Roche smiled and didn't speak, but turned to face the ocean. Just when Zoro, Luffy and others couldn't figure out what Roche wanted to do, a burst of golden light suddenly surrounded Roche. What happened? Zoro was about to say something, when suddenly a strong pressure came from Rock's position. He stared at Rosie with wide eyes, and found that Rosie's body was gradually changing under the golden light. His black casual clothes turned into a death suit, and a white haori with 11 written on it, and a serrated long sword appeared in his empty right hand. Even Rosie's hair turned into hedgehog-like hair. The small bell tied to the top of his hair kept ringing in the wind. This, Kenpachi Zaraki. Luffy opened his mouth and shouted excitedly. The so-called mimicry of the heroic spirit state is to directly project the power of the heroic spirit template onto yourself. Luffy, Zoro, don't you have a mysterious emblem on your chest? That is the projection of your heroic spirit template. When you transform into a mimicry of the heroic spirit, your clothes will move closer to the heroic spirit. Just like I am now in the mimicry of Kenpachi Zaraki's heroic spirit state, my aura becomes like Kenpachi Zaraki, and my clothes become the clothes he usually wears. And the effect is that I can use the power of the heroic spirit more flexibly, just like this. Roki raised his long sword with both hands, and then swung it fiercely towards the sea in front of him. Kendo 2 stage. Swish. A golden sword light flew out of Roki's hand, rushed forward at a high speed, and disappeared from everyone's sight in the blink of an eye. After a brief calm, the sea in front of Roki trembled violently. With a roar, in the surprised eyes of Zoro and others, the sea slowly split apart. At the same time, the boat under the feet of several people began to tremble violently. Luffy. Wow. As expected of Rosie, the sea was cut open. Zoro. The gap is so big. Nami. Stupid Rosie, the boat is about to capsize. Rosie smiled and looked at the split sea in front of him, and nodded with satisfaction. Although the use of Kendo 2 stage consumes a lot of physical strength, its effect still makes Rosie satisfied. Since the boat is going to capsize, let's change a boat. Anyway, it's not far from Orange Town now. Rosie glanced at Orange Town in the distance and directly contacted the mimicry of the heroic spirit. At the moment when the boat capsized under his feet, he picked up the suitcase with treasures with one hand, and the other hand wrapped around Nami's waist and jumped up suddenly. Come out, my golden deer. With Rosie's call, the sea surged again. A huge ship suddenly emerged from the bottom of the sea, just lifting up the overturned boat and Luffy and Zoro. Haha, I told you it's okay, Nami. Roche landed on the deck of the Golden Deer and asked Nami beside him with interest. Asshole, couldn't you tell me earlier that you wanted to summon a ship? Zoro, who was soaked, opened his mouth and yelled at Roche. What's the matter, isn't it just a little seawater on your body? And thanks to me, you don't have to row a boat now. Roche laughed. He, so awesome, I finally saw the real Golden Deer. I want to build a pirate ship like this in the future. Luffy held his hat and said excitedly. It's not easy to build a ship like the Golden Deer. Can you really do it, newbie? At this time, a strange voice sounded on the deck. Zoro, Luffy and others turned their heads and found a group of pirates dressed as sailors walking towards them. The one who just spoke was the leading pirate. Hey, who are you? Are you here to rob the ship? Luffy frowned and asked. Robbery. No, this ship is ours, how can we rob it? Ah, this is your ship, but isn't this the ship that Rosie summoned using Drake's ability? That's true, but don't you think there's something missing just by summoning the ship? What's missing? Luffy tilted his head, obviously not understanding what the sailor meant. Luffy, he should mean that when he summons the ship, he will also summon the sailors who originally belonged to the Golden Deer, right? Nami said tentatively. What a smart lady. The sailor looked at Nami in admiration. Indeed, the Golden Deer's voyage still needs people to control it. So when the Golden Deer appears, those of us who control the ship will also be summoned together. But it's a pity, I thought I could see Captain Drake after a long time. Now it seems that she has not been summoned. As he said, the sailor looked at Rosie with some regret. Rosie was not surprised by the appearance of sailors on the Golden Deer. Rosie could even understand why Drake might appear on the Golden Deer. To some extent, Derek's noble phantasm, Golden Deer and Stormy Night, is like the King's Army of the King of Conquerors. Just as the King of Conquerors Shadow Dancer, Hephaestion, can summon the King of Conquerors himself with the King's Army, Rosie can also summon Derek himself while summoning the Golden Deer. Of course, summoning Drake, who is a heroic spirit, is a huge cost. He didn't want to do such a thing just to hurry. Although he was also interested in the woman who conquered the ocean in the Type Moon world. Everyone, please help control the course of this ship. Our destination is the island ahead. I still have something to talk to our navigator, so I'll leave first. Rosie smiled and greeted the sailors, then took Nami to the captain of the Golden Deer. It seems that our big brother is as free and easy as the big sister Drake. Since the big brother has given the order, brothers, let's get to work. The leading sailors shouted to the sailors behind them, and everyone went to their posts. Can you summon the sailors of the Golden Deer, and even summon Derek himself? I wonder if I can summon Black Death himself in the future. Zoro looked at the backs of the sailors and muttered in a low voice. He, Zoro, Rosie is great. Luffy patted Zoro's shoulder heavily, raised his leg and walked towards the sailors. With his personality, he quickly became one with the sailors on the Golden Deer. Rosie, these all your collections? Nami widened her eyes and looked at the various jewelry and gems in the suitcase in disbelief. Just now, Rosie took out all the berry banknotes from the suitcase he carried with him. Then he completely took out the compartment under berry. And then, in addition to the 2 devil fruits that Roche had taken out before, there appeared in front of Nami a large number of shining gems. Yes, these are all my collections. Wow, so amazing, the colors of these gems are so shining and beautiful. Of course they are beautiful. Among these gems and jewelry, the cheapest ones cost tens of millions of berries, and some even cost hundreds of millions of berries. It is for this reason that I carry them with me. Hundreds of millions of berries. Then the one you just gave me. I'm sorry, the one I just gave you is worth at most a few million berries. What? You have so many gems, but you only gave me the cheapest one. What? Do you dislike it? If you dislike it, give it back to me. No, it's no longer yours once it's in my pocket. Nami took a step back, crossed her arms, and looked at Roche warily. But soon, her eyes were attracted by the various shining gems in the suitcase. Then, that Luo Qi, you showed these gems in front of me, are you going to give them to me? You wishful thinking, these are all high-quality goods I selected from the collection of the celestial dragons, how can I just give them away? Maybe my wife will need these jewelry in the future. Wife, if I become your wife, can I have these gems? Oh, Nami, can I regard your words as your confession to me? It's not that I can't regard it as a confession, as long as Luo Qi is willing to give me these gems. Nami, who was bewitched by the gems, had lost her mind. In her excitement, she even took the initiative to show her goodwill to Luo Qi. Ha ha, Luo Qi chuckled, stretched out his hands to quickly organize the gems and berries, and closed the suitcase. Nami woke up immediately after seeing this, and showed an expression of extreme disappointment and desire. Come on, stop staring at my property. But you asked me to follow you here, isn't it because you think I'm showing off my wealth? Showing off? No, showing off my treasures is just an excuse. I actually want to have a good talk with you about your problems. Me, what's my problem? Nami, let me make it clear. Are you afraid of me and what I will do to your hometown, so you don't plan to take us to your hometown? And you plan to abandon us halfway, or even if possible, would you steal the treasure from me? For a moment, Nami was stunned on the spot. But soon, she reacted. What the hell, how could I steal your treasure? If you are so strong, I can't possibly steal it successfully, haha. Nami waved her hands and said with a playful smile. Just looking at her expression, she didn't show any flaws. Nami, you didn't say whether you were afraid of me or not. Forget it, I'll tell you the truth. I know the location of the island where your hometown Kokoja village is located. So even if you plan to leave midway, I can find and go to that place. Don't underestimate a man who has been wandering on the sea and avoiding the navy for a long time. I'm not saying this to threaten you. I just want to tell you that if I really have ill intentions towards you in Kokoja village, there is nothing you can do to stop it. Instead of worrying about this and that, how about you let go of your guard and trust me for once? Don't tell me you don't want to gain the power to defeat the dragon pirates yourself. Do you really believe that those in the dragon pirates will keep their promise and let you and your hometown go? Luo Qi said solemnly. Nami was silent. She knew that Rosie was not exaggerating the truth. In fact, she had always known it in her heart. Since Rosie can know about the dragon pirates and her, he can naturally find out the location of Kokoja village. It's just that she hasn't been willing to face it all this time. After a long time, Nami sighed and said, Rosie, why are you insisting on letting me become Luffy's crew? If you want to recruit navigators, you should have many choices. Indeed, even in this East China Sea, there are many excellent navigators. But since I already have the best navigator in front of me, why should I look for others? What you said is really exaggerating, but I still want to say thank you. Nami, my eyes are not wrong. Although you are still very immature now, in the future you will definitely be able to control all the oceans in the world. The oceans of the Grand Line are constantly changing in each season, and the seas of the New World appear from time to time. Stormy seas, and, based on the knowledge he accumulated from working in the world government and watching the original One Piece in recent years, Rossi slowly laid out the ocean environment of the pirate world in front of Nami in detail. Gradually, Nami's eyes became brighter and brighter, and her mouth gradually opened wider. Are there really so many magical oceans in this world, Rosie? I guarantee my character, I never lied to you, Nami. Character. Luoqi, can you tell me about your previous experience? What, you want to judge whether I am trustworthy based on my past experiences? Haha, no way, you are worrying too much. Nami smiled awkwardly, mentally cursing Rosie's smart head. It seemed that she couldn't hide anything in front of Luoqi. Forget it, since you want to know, I'll tell you. Who do you think you are? The navigator I consider you to be. Rossi smiled and slowly told him about his training and work in the world government and why he defected in the end. Of course, things about time travel are naturally omitted. I see, he killed the nobles who enslaved ordinary people. Single quote. But is this noble named Tianlong really that noble? The navy would send so many troops to pursue him. Single quote. If what he said is true, then this man is quite a good person. Single quote. Nami stared straight into Roki's eyes with her beautiful eyes, muttering in her heart. We should have arrived at our destination, so let's end the conversation here. Nami, think carefully about what I said. Rossi nodded to Nami and walked towards the door. Etc. Nami suddenly grabbed Rosie's arm. Is there anything else, Nami? Luoqi turned around with some doubts. Rosie, let me be your woman. Nami held Luoqi's palm tightly with both hands, with a determined look on her face. Huh, what do you mean, Nami? Strange, you don't have a fever either. Looking at Nami in front of him, Luoqi reached out and touched her forehead and said. Luoqi, although you said that you have taken a fancy to my talent as a navigator, this reason is still too illusory. Even the fact that someone like you would become Luffy's crew is full of mysteries. Although I don't know what your purpose is in becoming Luffy's partner, making me a member of the pirate group and helping me. But I believe there is no free lunch in this ocean. Rosie, let me be your woman. As long as you keep your promise to help me save my hometown, I can serve you. Nami pursed her lips, with a little blush on her face. All the co-writing I have said is in vain. Single quote. Luoqi twitched the corner of his mouth. At this moment, he truly realized how much Nami distrusted pirates. Nami, does it mean that if I want you, you can rest assured? Luoqi shook his head. Since normal conversation didn't work, he decided to do the opposite. Nami groaned and nodded shyly. In fact, she was not really relieved, she just felt that if a deep bond was formed, Luoqi would be more likely to keep his promise. Very well, then do as you wish. Luoqi raised the corners of his mouth and suddenly wrapped his arms around Nami's waist. Thinking that Luoqi was about to take action, Nami's face turned even red. Having said that, you are too immature now. I prefer mature and pretty women. Nami, I will store your first time with you. When you are more mature in 2 years, I will come to you to ask for it. Nami was stunned and raised her head to look at Luoqi, who had let go of her hand, only to find that Luoqi was looking at her with disgust. Especially when looking at the position of Nami's heart, the expression on Rossi's face almost read the word, disgust. Wah, what, I'm pretty big, aren't I? Haha, I'm sorry, I've seen better and bigger ones than you. I really can't do anything to you now, little girl Nami. What a little girl, I'm already an adult. Wait, tell me clearly, don't go away. Seeing Rosie opening the door and leaving the cabin, Nami followed angrily. She never imagined that her determined act of devotion would end in this way. Wait until you want her in 2 years. Successful, but not entirely successful. Thinking of Luoqi's disgusted expression just now, Nami's original fear of Luoqi was instantly replaced by anger towards Luoqi. As for Luoqi, looking at Nami behind him, he laughed in his heart while still maintaining a look of disgust on his face. Until Luoqi and Nami returned to the deck of the Golden Deer. What, is the deal settled? Zoro turned around, looked at Rosie and Nami and said plainly. Now that we're done talking, where did that guy Luffy go? That guy went to the town over there first, and I couldn't stop him. As expected of Luffy, he disappeared after a while without being seen. I'm here to inform you. Now that you've finished talking, let's go there together. Isn't there another Bucky pirate group in this town? No, we can just take a boat there. Take a boat, please, how can a boat go by? Is it possible to fly? Hey, Zoro, I suddenly realized that you are quite smart. What's so clever? I'm already smart. Wait, You mean this ship can fly? Zoro's eyes widened at this moment when he realized something was wrong. Luo Qi shrugged and raised his right hand slightly. The next moment, the golden deer actually left the sea and entered the air, and then flew towards the center of Orange Town at extremely fast speeds. Not to mention Zoro, even Nami was stunned by this wave of operations. I'm sorry, but Drake's Golden Heart is no ordinary ship. For the golden deer that has been transformed into a noble phantasm, flying is just a small problem. Luo Qi chuckled and was about to explain the functions of the golden deer to Nami and Zoro. A huge roar suddenly came to mind. Luo Qi frowned and looked in the direction of the sound. It was discovered that a cannonball with a clown pattern painted on the surface was breaking through the air and flying towards the direction of the golden deer at an extremely fast speed. Bucky Cannonball, single quote. This guy actually used a cannon to attack me. Single quote. Breath of the moon, shape of one dark moon, palace of night. Zoro quickly came to Bucky's cannonball and raised his hand to dodge. The sharp slash split the cannonball into two halves in an instant, and fell from Zoro's left and right sides toward the rear. Zarin really learned. Hey, what are you doing? Nami was about to sigh at Zoro's breath of the moon, but Razi reached out and brought her to her side. He even used the fork shield to build a defensive shield in front of the two of them. Just when Nami was confused, the cannonball that was split into two halves suddenly exploded violently. Zoro, who was smiling with confidence that he had cut off the cannonball, was instantly blown away by the remaining power of the cannonball. The remaining power of the cannonballs that hit Luo Qi and Nami were all blocked by the fork shield. As for the golden deer, it's not built to be destroyed by a Bucky round. Ahem, why is this bomb different from the previous one? Rosie, if you knew, why didn't you remind me? Zoro coughed twice, walked out of the smoke, and looked at Rosie with dissatisfaction. Anyway, it has been cut off by you. The power of this shell has been greatly reduced, and it won't hurt you. And if you experience it yourself, won't you be more cautious in handling it in the future? Rosie dispersed the fork shield, patted Zoro's shoulder, and looked up at the direction where the shell came from. A red light flashed in his eyes, and the light of the observation hockey quickly swept away. Soon, a familiar breath fell into his perception. Luffy, why is that guy still locked up? Rosie frowned slightly, with confusion in his eyes. Luffy is locked up. Rosie, what do you mean by this? No, how did you see Luffy locked up here? Zoro asked. Remember the observation hockey I mentioned earlier? I sensed it through this power. Rather than this, let's go and see the specific situation ahead. Razi said, and the golden deer flew straight to the direction where the buggy bomb came from. At the same time, on the other side. How about it? Have you seen the power of my buggy bomb, Straw Hat Luffy? If I want, I can use this cannonball to execute you now. Baki squatted on the ground, grinning at Luffy, who was huddled in a small cell like a box in front of him. Why did you lock me up with your big nose? Wait, the cannonball just now, did you destroy all the houses in this town? Luffy grabbed the railing with both hands and yelled at Buggy angrily. HMPH, brat. You just barged into my banquet and ate our food. That's not all. You actually know that fool Shanks. Since he gave you the hat, he must think highly of you. In that case, I will not let you off even more. Baki stood up and waved his hand, asking his pirates to move the turret that released the buggy bomb to aim at Luffy. Ah, do you know Shanks? More than that, if it weren't for that guy, I wouldn't have eaten the devil fruit and become a landlubber. Tisk, why am I saying this to a dying person? Hey, you guys, I asked you to move the cannon over, didn't you hear me? Baki first said to Luffy, then turned around and yelled at his companions behind him. What is that? Impossible, I must be dazzled. Sky, how can there be that thing in the sky? Isn't that something used on the sea? What a big ship, bigger than our pirate ship. The crew members of Buggy's pirate group ignored Buggy and just stared at the sky. Just when Buggy was about to explode in anger, the vice captain of Buggy's pirate group, the animal trainer Mochi, faced Buggy and pointed his right hand to the sky. Captain Buggy, there's a ship flying over in the sky. You are confused, Mochi, how could there be, a real ship in the sky? Buggy looked at the golden deer in the sky, his eyes almost popped out of his eye sockets. He, you are so funny, Big Nose. How about it? That ship is very cool, that's my partner's ship. Luffy patted Buggy's shoulder and said with a big laugh. What? That's your partner's ship? Are you kidding? I've only heard of one person who can make a ship fly in the air. That's the former great pirate Shiki the Golden Lion. You said before that you formed a pirate group. You don't mean to say that Shiki the Golden Lion joined your pirate group? How can that be possible? Wait, how did you, a rubber idiot, come out? Baki opened his mouth wide and took 2 steps back to avoid Luffy. He turned his head to look at the cage where Luffy was originally imprisoned, but found that the cage was broken into 2 pieces as if it was cut by a sharp weapon. Its cut surface was like a flat piece of tofu. It was cut like this. Luffy laughed, and stretched his right hand into a knife shape and stretched several meters towards the sky. Then he fell towards the small cell that had been cut into 2. When approaching the cell, Luffy's front arm condensed a blue-white energy knife. The blade landed on the cell and immediately cut the cell open again. Awesome. Is this rubber fool a monster? He can actually cut a concrete cell. You are focusing on the wrong point. Did something strange appear in the hand of that rubber guy just now? Like a relatively large fork. Wait, is this the ability of the rubber fruit? The buggy pirate stared at Luffy with wide eyes, looking at him as if he were a monster. But Buggy, after seeing Luffy's method, a light flashed in his eyes. But soon, he looked at Luffy in shock like the other companions. Straw Hat Boy, do you have a knife in your hand? And you, answer me quickly, what is your relationship with Golden Lion? Baki used the power of the split fruit to separate his hands, grabbed Luffy's collar and shook him. Golden Lion, who is that? You don't know Golden Lion. What's the matter with the ship flying on it? That ship is the Golden Deer. It's a pirate ship summoned by my partner Rosie. How about it, isn't it cool? Rosie. Buggy frowned. Could it be that the old guy Golden Lion is dead, and the float fruit was eaten by this man named Rosie? After careful consideration, Buggy felt that it was very likely. Although Golden Lion escaped from Impel Down. But he has not appeared on the sea for a long time. Judging from Golden Lion's age, it is not impossible for him to die of old age. In this way, it is reasonable for a new pirate who ate the float fruit to join the Straw Hat Pirates. But why do I always feel like I've heard the name Rosie somewhere before? Baki took back one hand, held his chin and said doubtfully. It's an honor. I didn't expect that my name would be remembered by the legendary pirate Buggy. Should I say thank you? At this time, a male voice came from the bow of the Golden Deer. Baki looked in the direction of the voice and soon saw the person who spoke. It's you, Rosie. You are the rookie pirate who was offered a bounty of 500 million berries when he debuted, and now a bounty of 800 million. How is it possible? How could someone like you join this kid's pirate group? Straw Hat Fool, were you lying to me just now? Baki looked at Rosie, then looked at Luffy angrily and shouted. What? Rosie is really my partner. Luffy slapped Buggy's arm away, laughed and waved at Rosie. Luffy, you are such a mess. You get into trouble if you don't pay attention. Rosie jumped off the Golden Deer and landed next to Luffy. After that, Nami and Zoro also jumped off. He, I smelled meat, so I came here first. But I thought this big-nosed guy was a good person, but I didn't expect him to want to use a cannon to attack me just now. By the way, Rosie, from what you said just now, do you know this red-nosed guy? Luffy said dissatisfiedly, not noticing that Buggy's face darkened when he heard the word, red nose. A crew member of Pirate King Roger, who is on good terms with the 4 Emperors Shanks, how could I not know such a pirate? Rosie's words directly revealed Buggy's background. Buggy, who was originally gloomy, also looked at Rossie's face in shock after Rossie finished speaking. What? This guy is a member of the Pirate King's crew, and he is on good terms with Shanks. Luffy's eyes widened as he could not imagine that a strange pirate like Buggy actually had such a background. As for what Rossie said, Luffy did not have the slightest doubt. And behind Buggy, the crew members of Buggy's pirate group were also shocked after hearing Rossie's words. That being said, this guy just fired his shells at the Golden Deer. Then I have to find an explanation from him. Bucky, you said earlier that Shanks made you eat the devil fruit, right? You seem to dislike the devil fruit, how about giving me your devil fruit? Rozzy raised the corner of his mouth and showed a very mysterious smile to Buggy. You want my devil fruit, are you kidding? Bucky looked at Rossi with an idiotic expression, but he had no idea that Rossi could take the devil fruit of unconscious people out of their bodies with the help of the system. Of course, the premise is that the ability user is in an unconscious state, and it needs to be defeated by Rozzy himself or his companions. Are you kidding? You will understand if you try it. Rozzy chuckled and slowly touched the handle of the Kinpira behind him with his right hand. Let me do it, Vice Captain. Zoro walked in front of Rozzy with a terrifying smile on his face. It just so happens that I still need to get familiar with my power. Since we are going to fight, how can I be left out? As the moon's breath surged, a cold breath similar to that of Kokushibo rose from Zoro. Those pirates who were weaker and looked directly at Zoro shuddered involuntarily. Even though it was daytime and the sun was high in the sky, they seemed to feel the cold wind of winter at this moment. Hearing this, Roche nodded. Well, since you want to go, I'll leave it to you. I'll take a rest. Nami, are you interested in walking with me? Roche waved to Nami and walked towards the direction behind Buggy and others. Are you familiar with your abilities? He, I also want to be familiar with my abilities. Let me get involved. Luffy bumped his fists and laughed while a red ghost phantom rose behind him. The venue, which had become cold because of Zoro, became even hotter. Then, you guys fight slowly, I'll go find Roche. Nami laughed awkwardly and ran to Roche. Even though Zoro and Luffy's aura was not intended to be released to Nami, Nami still felt a trace of fear spreading from the bottom of her heart. At least at this time, she didn't want to stay here. Where are you two going? Do you really think I'm afraid of you? Let you guys taste my close-range buggy bomb. Buggy roared angrily at the backs of Rosie and Nami, and his right leg split directly and kicked in the direction of Rosie. At the same time, a small buggy bomb flew out from the bottom of Buggy's feet and attacked Rosie and Nami directly. Seeing this, Nami's eyes widened, and her speed suddenly increased to Rosie's side. And Zoro and Luffy also ran towards the buggy bomb each, trying to intercept it in their own way. But compared to the two of them, Rosie was faster. He turned his head and glanced at Buggy and the buggy bomb he released, and the golden deer floating in the sky immediately moved. A turret on the golden deer suddenly turned and fired a golden laser directly at Buggy. At the same time, Buggy was caught in it. Instantly, a strong sense of crisis rose from Buggy's heart. Fleeing in pieces, Buggy did not hesitate and directly used his fruit ability to scatter his body to avoid the attack of the golden deer. But even so, he was troubled by the golden deer hanging high in the sky. What's going on with this ship? Is there a laser ability user on it? Hey, Rosie, you. Hey, where are the people? Buggy reassembled his body and looked at Rosie and Nami, but there was no trace of Rosie and Nami behind him. Not only that, when he turned around again, the golden deer in the air had disappeared out of thin air. What's going on? How can such a big ship disappear? Buggy wiped his eyes. If it weren't for the traces of damage caused by the golden laser of the golden deer, he would still be there. He even thought that the golden deer he had seen before was just an illusion. Before he could think about it, Zoro and Luffy, who had been impatient for a long time, had already used their own methods to come to him and the members of the Buggy Pirates. Breath of the Moon Type 2 Zuhu and Onyu. Breath of the Moon Type 3 Disgusting Moon Erosion. Breath of the Moon Type 5 Moon Soul Disaster Vortex. Rubber, fork, rubber, knife, rubber, consecutive nail punch. Boom boom. On the platform, Zoro and Luffy's attacks overlapped with each other. For a moment, all the members of the Buggy Pirates were thrown into the air. Watching this scene, Buggy's eyes twitched, and his angry shouts continued to spread far away. Hey, Rosie, is it okay for us to leave Zoro and Luffy there? Although they are powerful, Buggy is a veteran pirate and has a high bounty. And didn't you say Buggy is a member of the Pirate King's crew? Without you, a pirate with 800 million berries, aren't you afraid that Luffy and Zoro will get into trouble? Also, where are we going now? Nami looked at the battlefield getting farther and farther away, swallowed her saliva, and sighed in her heart. Even though she was not good at fighting, she could see the sudden increase in power of Zoro and Luffy after obtaining the heroic spirit template. To be honest, if she hadn't been worried that she would be controlled by Rosie after obtaining the heroic spirit template, she would have chosen to obtain the heroic spirit template a long time ago. However, it seems that I can't get rid of his control now. Single quote. Tisk, what an unpleasant man. What do you mean I should come back to him in 2 years? Am I really so unattractive? Single quote. Thinking of what Rosie said to her in the Golden Deer, Nami muttered in her heart again. Luffy and Zoro are considered very powerful in the East China Sea. With the heroic spirit templates, they are even more qualified to enter the Grand Line. If I have to watch every battle, I will be too tired, and it will not be conducive to their growth. The power of heroic spirits, but the more skillfully you use it, the more opportunities you have to develop more power of your respective heroic spirit. As for Bucky, although that person is a member of the Pirate King's crew, there is no need to worry too much about him. Instead of worrying about those things, don't you want to find Bucky's treasure, Nami? As he said that, Rosie raised his eyebrows at Nami. Treasure, yes, come on, Rosie, we're going over there. Nami's eyes lit up, and she ran directly past Rosie towards the residence where the Bucky pirates were stationed in front, causing Rosie to roll his eyes. What a woman who is blind to money. Rosie sighed, stepped on the ground, and quickly passed Nami to reach Bucky's treasure place. By the time Nami found the location, Rosie had already opened Bucky's treasure box and counted the bills inside. Mine, these are all mine. Nami's eyes lit up, she kicked her legs on the ground and flew directly to Roki's position. Sorry, first come first served. Luo Chi turned around and clamped Nami directly under his wrist. As the vice captain of the Straw Hat Pirates, these treasures found certainly belong to the Straw Hat Pirates. Nami, didn't you say before that you didn't want to become a member of the Straw Hat Pirates? I think these treasures have nothing to do with you, right? Hearing this, Nami immediately struggled desperately under Luo Chi's wrist. No, I also have a share of these treasures. Rosie, please let me touch these treasures too. I'll just join you. It hurts. What's going on with this rubber fool? Get away quickly, that pirate hunter is a monster. Captain, please help, we are no match for those 2 men. The crew of the buggy pirates shouted for help and struggled to avoid the attacks of Luffy and Zoro. In just a few minutes, most of the members of the buggy pirates had fallen. This was even when Luffy and Zoro were not using their full strength. It's just that although the pirates were shouting, Bucky, who used the split fruit to float his body high in the sky, did not offer any help. He only looked at the direction where Rosie and Nami were leaving from time to time, and landed on them from time to time. On Luffy and Zoro. Shanks, what's going on with this rubber idiot? Isn't he a rubber fruit capable person? Why does it seem like there are 2 kinds of fruit abilities? Single quote. This Roronoa, when did a guy who could use flying slashes appear in the East China Sea? Single quote. And that Luo Chi, the disappearing ship was probably not controlled by the power of the Piao Piao fruit. Could it be the ability of the Chuan Chuan fruit? Single quote. This guy just said he wanted my fruit power, he was really joking. Single quote. While Bucky was thinking, his body instinctively avoided Zoro's sword energy. What kind of weird ability does this man have? Why does his slashing attack have no effect? Zoro smacked his mouth and looked at Bucky floating in the air wordlessly. Our Captain Bucky is invincible. He ate the split fruit, so slashing has no effect on him. Mochi, the vice captain of the buggy pirates who had just been punched to the ground by Luffy, raised his head with difficulty and smiled mockingly at Zoro. In exchange for his words, Sauron casually waved a sword light, which frightened him into flying away. Since slashing has no effect, let's let our fists do the talking. Zarin, leave this to me. Just in time, I thought of a new way to use the power of Uru. Luffy rolled up his sleeves and looked like he was about to take action. TCH, in that case, I'll leave that guy to you. Zoro glanced at Luffy, who had a serious expression on his face, and finally decided to hand over Bucky, who was very difficult to a swordsman, to Luffy. Thanks. Luffy thanked him, lowered his body quickly, and waves of air began to rise from his body. In fact, a burst of deep red light began to spread from his heart. This ray of light quickly spread from Luffy's heart to the surroundings of his body, and soon enveloped Luffy's entire body. This state is. Zoro opened his eyes wide. He thought for no reason that Rossi had entered the state of Kenpachi's mimic heroic spirit before. Isn't it possible that Luffy really mastered that kind of power in such a short period of time? Zoro murmured softly, feeling a pressure in his heart for no reason. What the hell is this guy doing? Bucky frowned. Sensing that Luffy was in a bad state, he began to control his body to float away from Luffy. After a few seconds, the light around Luffy suddenly shrank. When Luffy appeared in front of everyone again, his body had grown larger for no reason, and the muscles in his arms and legs were particularly developed. Does this look like the rubber is inflated? Inflate it, inflate it. When did this kid change his clothes and dye his hair blue? Bucky frowned more and more, becoming more confused about Luffy's situation. Having seen many wonderful things on the sea, he first thought of the awakening of devil fruit abilities. But thinking of the strength shown by Luffy, Bucky directly rejected his thoughts. The power of the mimic heroic spirit. Luffy, you really can do this? Zoro said in amazement. Hee. After seeing that Luochi had just used the mimic heroic spirit state, I wanted to give it a try. After all, I feel like I get along quite well with the heroic spirit in me, and the result really didn't disappoint me. Luffy clenched his fists and felt that his body's strength had even doubled. It's really a powerful force. Although it's quite strenuous, there are suddenly many more tricks that can be used in my head. Hee, let me try this. Throwing knives. Luffy laughed, and quickly slashed Bucky with the knife in his right hand at high altitude. This time, Luffy didn't even use his fruit ability. Judging from the distance, his attack should not be able to hit Bucky, who is relatively far away. However, such a blow happened just when Luffy's arm was about to hit the ground. A knife, made of blue and white energy, flew out of Luffy's hand knife out of thin air and quickly flew towards Bucky's position. What? Can this thing still fly? Bucky was so shocked that he forgot to move for a moment. Transfer to the umbrella. Aha! The flying knife that Luffy fought passed over Bucky's body and directly split his body into two halves. But even so, Bucky's body still did not fall from the air, and the pupils in his eyes continued to rotate, proving his survival. Idiot, don't use slashing attacks, it will have no effect on him. Zoro clenched his fists and yelled at Luffy. Seeing Luffy using slashes to deal with Bucky, Zoro's original surprise at Luffy using the power of heroic spirit mimicry disappeared instantly. Hee, I'm sorry, I used this power accidentally. Next I'll blow this red nose away. Luffy scratched the back of his head and laughed. Asshole, you told me not to call me Red Nose. Bucky put his body back together, and with a ferocious expression, he controlled the dagger in both hands and stabbed Luffy in the waist. It's useless. Look at my forked shield. Luffy remembered the way Luochi used the fork shield, and he directly constructed a shield composed of two energy forks while waving his hands. Bucky's flying knife hit the fork shield and was bounced away. It's so fun, I get to use this move too. Try this next, flying fork. Luffy's hands formed into claws and he punched out two punches in Bucky's direction. The blue-white energy fork formed instantly and pierced Bucky's body directly. In desperation, Bucky could only choose to separate his body to avoid Luffy's attack. However, Luffy's attack has just begun. In order to become familiar with the power of Alu's heroic spirit template, he directly used Bucky as the target of the combo. With the rubber fruit and gourmet cells, Luffy was constantly using new tricks on Bucky. Until Rossi and Nami returned to the battlefield. Luffy, you are still playing, be careful of losing your strength due to this state. Luochi held two large bags of treasure in both hands and said to Luffy. It's Luochi, you're back. What's that in your hand? It's the treasure of the Bucky pirates. I went to get it while you guys were fighting Bucky. Treasure, great. Luffy raised his hands happily. Asshole, those are my treasures. Put it down, you thieves. Bucky's eyes widened and he looked at Rossi as if he wanted to fight Rossi to death. Knock you away, and these treasures will be ours. Luffy raised the corners of his mouth and threw his hands violently behind him. Under the influence of the rubber fruit's ability, Luffy's hands instantly stretched to a distance of 10 meters. Rubber, bazooka consecutive nail punches. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.